Good evening, everybody. I'm sorry. I don't have like a fun attention grabber like I'm sure all of you do, having all your years in the classroom, but this is me. And do we have an echo? Is that going? Okay, I'm going to turn this off.
Attention grabber.
Hopefully that doesn't stay. Okay, yes, that can be my fun attention grabber that everybody's annoyed to hear me talk. Hi, welcome to the January 2025 Curriculum Committee of the School Board of Lower Merion School District, and we are going to get right into it, and we're going to start first. We have two contracts for review. First, we're going to talk about the Curriculum Associates Toolbox. Scott?
I would argue that you announcing that you don't have a fun attention grabber was the attention grabber. It locked me right in, and good way to start the meeting.
I need some practice. Y'all have a lot more experience than me.
It worked though. The first contract is from Curriculum Associates. It's a product called Teacher Toolbox. This is a teacher resource for K-8. It standard aligns curriculum that supports teachers in innovative lesson planning and most importantly, differentiation in the area of reading and writing. So our teachers use this to a wide level. It's our second year using it, and it's an annual contract.
Anybody have any questions? Go ahead.
Just wondering if there's any feedback how it's going so far, since it's a fairly new item.
My mic's still on, yes. Dory, I'm going to call you because you're meeting with teachers and talking about it more frequently. So if you would come and give us some feedback, I'd appreciate it. Either one. I think if you turn a live mic on, it'd be great.
Yeah, you can do that, or you can just come sit at the table. That's fine also.
Good evening. Yes, actually, we expanded the use based on the first year of utilization because this way we could access across the middle school, 5 through 8. It was first year, I think it was K through 5, and then we expanded it throughout the middle school so it could support all tiers of instruction. So it's a little more.
So is it only being used for middle schools? I'm only seeing middle schools on this list.
Well, we
here.
already had elementary, so we had to add on. That's the expansion because they had requested it, knowing, wow, we had it last year, and then more people wanted access, so we.
So is it a one-time purchase, or is it a yearly?
Annual.
Okay.
It's yearly.
Okay, I had a question on the numbers here. I'm looking at BC. It's saying it has the building enrollment and the grades 5 to 8. For Welsh Valley, it's listing the no, I'm crossing my columns here. Excuse me. But why is it less expensive for BC than it is for Black Rock, and Welsh Valley, since there are different enrollment numbers at each building?
So it's site-based. They go by, once you put in numbers of an enrollment, they have a set price. We don't really get to negotiate that. It's based on how many students, and the grade K-8 is the levels
So is
of
800
access.
the threshold? Because it's $796 versus
Yes, it must
$818,
be.
and it's $900 more for an additional 22 children.
Yes, it is both myself and Dr. Lilly, we have tried to negotiate. They're pretty set in their prices for this specific resource.
That's very frustrating. Curriculum Associates, you should
Yes.
charge per pupil. That would be nice, but all right. Sarah, did you have more questions?
No, I was just gonna say, it looks like in the description, after it says per site, it has like 501 to 800 students for BC, and then 801 to 1200 for Black Rock. Do you see that?
Sorry, I got a new mouse and it's scrolling differently and I can't.
And that's how the
read
price
it.
is.
Oh, I
price
see
difference
exactly
as
what you're
well.
talking about, yeah.
So we just have to figure out the numbering so we can get within each of the columns to then
I think we're not gonna move kids around just to have a $900 savings, but that would be nice.
The positive is all teachers, special education, regular education, they all have access.
Can you reiterate for me, I'm sorry, the purpose of the software?
The teacher toolbox?
Yes.
Absolutely. So for instructional coherence, it goes along with, we have the iReady, that's adaptable assessment, and then we have the Ready resources. This is the teacher-only resource that they get to do additional planning and provide interventions that they get to, even if they don't have access to iReady, which is a tier 2, they have access to this. So we use it at the middle school, they can use it in the regular classroom and also use it in I&E. So it can be used for regular instruction or it can be used as an intervention. It has that many resources.
So is it for curricular planning or for like measurement tools? Like if I'm a teacher and I want to give a quiz?
Lesson planning.
Lesson planning, okay.
It's actual lessons to match up with where the student is, to say, if you need to hit this standard and this skill, here are some lessons that you could use at this level.
And so it's something that would be used more on a class-based level, or is it something that's going to be more targeted towards like an MTSS
Both.
where we're going to do individualized instruction?
Both. It
Both,
could be used in
fantastic.
both ways.
Did anybody else have, okay, go ahead.
I'm just curious, what form is it? Is it like a textbook? Is it online? I'm just curious.
It's online, it's digital, however you can print out. And we also do have like a copy of the workbook if someone needed the actual tangible resource.
Thank you.
You got it.
Okay, if we do not have any more questions, is everybody who's on the committee, that's 1, 2, 3, were we all good moving this forward? Yes, yes, fantastic. Okay, we will
Thank
see
you.
this at the next full board meeting. Next, we're going to go, thank you, Dr. Martin Patone. We're going to move on to the 3-year renewal of Wonder Media Habits of Mind for grades K through 6.
So around 2018 or so, we engaged with Ben Akelik, who came in as a consultant for the district, and our elementary schools moved towards learning about habits of mind, social emotional learning. Some examples, there's 16 of them. Some examples are thinking about your thinking, which is metacognition, listen and understanding with empathy, thinking and communicating with clarity and precision, taking responsible risks. So there's 16 of them that throughout the elementary curriculum that our teachers try to expose students with, along with the academic learning. And this is a 3-year contract that supplements and gives videos to enrich the habits of mind with our young learners.
So that's what the license is videos?
Yes,
Effectively.
videos to support teachers so they can explicitly teach the habits of mind.
Okay, yeah,
Correct.
I was just, I know we have all the materials and the teachers have been teaching it for a long time, and I was curious as to what the value add was. Does anybody else have any questions? Go ahead.
Just wondering, is this for all of the elementary schools?
It is.
Okay, I was just looking at the number of licenses, seemed a little weird for each one. Is it like a license per classroom or per school?
I was looking at that too, and I can't figure the math out. I'll get back to you on like how we utilize that.
Okay.
But it is, what I can confirm, it's for all 6 schools. It's universal
Okay.
across K to 4.
Because I was guessing, like, the 4th to 6th grade one is really only used for 4th grade, but I can't
Correct,
figure out
yeah.
how the 9 comes into play. We don't have 9 elementary schools, but we have way more than 9 sections of 4th
Yeah.
grade across all of our elementary schools.
Understood. I got to get you that answer.
Okay.
Yep.
We pause
I
on
wonder
that?
if it's one license gives you like materials for up to X number of teachers?
Maybe.
Probably. We'll get that in
Yeah.
a follow-up.
Okay.
We did, in knowing that we were going to bring the contract in front of you, Ms. Gaudioso, Dr. Gaudioso did reach out to elementary teachers, making sure we're using it at a high level across the buildings, and the data came back good in surveying teachers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for what it's worth, my kids have both come home and completely unprompted spit out various parts of it in like regular non-school life and in school, and it is nice to hear your kids actually thinking about how they're presenting themselves, being a person in the world, acting empathetically, and approaching a problem. So yes, I would say from my own personal experience and anecdata, I think it is a worthy expenditure of our money, but you had some,
I don't have a comment about that, but I just realized that the address has Ardmore, Ohio instead of a PA. And that just, I didn't notice it until right now, so I just wanted to.
And Carol Cafiero is in here.
good catch. All right.
Yeah, I guess don't fix it.
Go for it.
It has been part of our cost-saving strategy, so thank you for recognizing that.
Very successful plan. Are we all good moving this forward? Yes, yes? And I am too. Okay, so we are 2 for 2 on our contracts, and we are ready to move forward to our presentations. First, we're going to talk about math sequencing readiness and resources, and that is particularly about IXL and Desmos. So.
Correct. So we have 2 presentations for tonight. The first one is a math presentation, and you are going to hear from Dr. Lilly and 2 of our math teachers momentarily, and then we're going to go into the PAYS survey. I want to thank some middle school principals that came out to support their teachers in presenting, and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Lilly.
You're up there. He's supposed to be switching you over from the.
That's not my understanding. I think I'm supposed to be using the clicker to advance my slides. Yes.
I promise we've done this before.
Magic behind the curtain.
That's a cool screensaver. Well, just to preview it, for anybody else who's sat through these presentations before, our first slide here is going to be our very favorite math slide, where we have the really complicated graph with all the different ways you can go to and from different levels of math.
It's coming.
And you just get like a gold star in your imagination that I'm giving you if you know exactly the picture I'm talking about.
So tonight we have the opportunity to talk a little bit about our kind of like the state of the union for the math department, specifically focusing on really K-8, more focused even solely on middle school. But we're going to talk about the things that you already addressed, but there are parts to this presentation. It's going to start with sequencing. We're going to talk about readiness. Then we're going to talk about resources, both our primary core resources and then some of our supplemental resources. IXL is one of the ones that was named. And then we're going to share some future considerations, things that we're thinking about within the math department that we plan to bring here for a future meeting for discussion. So this is the gold star being referred to. This is our math sequencing as it exists right now. It took a long time to get to what this looks like today. I wanted to take a little bit of a time to talk about what it used to look like and what it is now and how we got there. So there was a time before my time here where the only acceleration opportunity that existed was after fourth grade. So as you can imagine, that fourth grade year, high stakes for kids, in or out. End of fourth grade, you qualified for acceleration or you didn't. You then moved into, grade level math for the remainder of your time, or you were in the accelerated track back then. So sometime shortly after that, it was decided that fifth grade would be worth taking a second look. And the thing to keep in mind here is this is when our elementary schools were K-5. Okay, so the model's a little different today. So in K-5, fourth grade was that, the big deal year. And then fifth grade, they decided to take a second look. And that was still in place when I first started here. I've been in the district almost 9 years now. And those two acceleration points were the only ones that existed when I got here. Through a lot of vetting, an audit of the math curriculum, and really digging in and having conversations with teachers, staff, and people that had been here longer than me, we decided, why would we not have additional opportunities for kids to accelerate? Why would it end when kids left elementary school and not look at them again when they were in middle school? Knowing that research tells us the math brain matures at different times for different kids. So we created additional opportunities. Today we have opportunities after fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade, and seventh grade. So lots of opportunities for acceleration. One of the things that we talked about when we made these changes was creating equity through greater access. It was important. We had to get beyond elementary school to increase those opportunities. Even with all those opportunities, the challenge that still exists for us today is how do we determine readiness? It's one of the most important things we think about and talk about year in and year out, because what we don't want to do is push someone too early or too fast and have them have a negative experience with math, so they end up not liking math when they could have been a strong math student if we had just waited maybe one more year. So this is the challenge that we're faced with. It's the thing we talk about every year. So looking a little bit at where we've been and where we're trying to go. when we think about readiness for kids, we try to take into consideration everything that's going on in their world in school during that time. So some examples of things we've included in determining readiness over the years are their course grades. Now keep in mind, some of our grade levels have standards-based grading. Some of them have more traditional grading, letters and numbers. So it's different, so it varies. So even trying to consider that, we have to consider it in different ways for different levels. When I first got here, elementary had some benchmark tests, which really were cumulative assessments. Middle school did not have cumulative assessments, but we do now. So these are things that have changed over time. They're consistent across buildings. Over the years, we've included things like a teacher evaluation of the math practices and student habits. You know, we talked about habits of mind. Those are some of the things that we consider, the things we look at in how do students engage with math during the school year. In some grades, we have an assessment at the end of the course. And in some instances, like the 5th grade, which was that second chance look at acceleration, there was just a test. That's what it was. Up until this past year, that's still what was in place. So there's a 5th grade test at the end of the year where if students get a certain score, they accelerate, and if they don't, they don't. That's how it works. We're trying to do better than that. Multiple criteria, looking at different ways students demonstrate their understanding, is something that's part of the 4th grade acceleration and the 6th grade acceleration. That doesn't exist in 5th grade. It doesn't make sense to us. It doesn't feel good to us that 5th grade is one test in or out. It's a carryover from that old, you're leaving elementary school, we'll check one more time when you go to middle school. So we're trying to do better. Something else that exists on some of our rubrics is unequal weighting. So what I mean by that is if we included something like quarter grades and then cumulative assessments, sometimes we valued one of them more than another. And we don't want to do that because some kids do better on big tests. Some kids do better demonstrating understanding through what they do in the classroom or projects or interacting with others. So we want multiple ways for kids to be able to demonstrate their readiness. So we're trying to correct some of those things. So going forward, we still consider all those different things that exist for kids. But one of the things we're adding this year is the inclusion of an IXL diagnostic. You're going to hear a lot about IXL today, what it is, and then specifically about the diagnostic component of that product. But we definitely want to use multiple criteria across all grades, 5th grade included. The other thing that changed a little bit this year was that balance. When we add new criteria as part of our evaluation process, we tend to set a low bar. So for instance, when we brought on cumulative assessments, we set the bar pretty low as far as how to earn all of the points compared to things that had been in place for a long time, like quarter grades or course grades. Over time, we adjust that because we get more and more data year in and year out. So we're able to make adjustments to make decisions that meet the needs of kids in trying to determine that readiness. So you'll see some of that. You'll hear about that tonight. We'll talk into some of those things. But what I want to do right now is turn it over to Rachel King. Rachel King is our math specialist at BlackRock. And she's going to talk a little bit about what the 5th grade experience was like. And then she's going to talk into IXL in more detail. And before I turn it over to Rachel, this is important. This year, because we changed some of the criteria, we're going to evaluate students in both ways. We're going to evaluate students on the old way that we evaluated for acceleration, and we're also going to evaluate students in the new way, including the IXL diagnostic. So we're going to do it both ways. I will say, and we'll talk into this as we go through, we do believe that including IXL is going to qualify more kids for acceleration than without thinking about, especially like that 5th grade with one test. So I'm going to turn it over to Rachel.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. As Jason said, I'm a very proud teacher at BlackRock Middle School, and I'm happy to be here to talk to you guys about IXL. So To piggyback on what Jason was saying about the grade 5, that one test, it is a very hard day for students and teachers alike. The students know what's at stake on that one day, on that one test. So there's a lot of crying, a lot of stress. It's their only criteria, so there's a tremendous amount of pressure. So that's kind of where the change originated. It's one that we're welcoming because we know how much pressure the students, they want to succeed and they want to make their teachers proud, but it's a hard day for them. So for IXL, it's a program we use at the middle level, and it has 3 distinct functions. So I'm going to talk through all of those and then get a little more specific with each one. So the main point that we're here to talk about is the IXL diagnostic, which we know is this like computer adaptive test that can increase or decrease in difficulty based on the student's responses, and then at the end gives them a student math level. Based on that diagnostic, they then receive a personalized plan which addresses specific skills that they may need to work on, gaps, and it can also identify areas for enrichment that they might be above grade level and things of that nature. And then separately, it has a skill plan which more closely resembles our state standards and our core math resource, which is Amplify. All students can be assigned a skill that correlates to a standard, and that is separate from the diagnostic and their personal plan. I have an image up there of a sample question from a diagnostic test. So just to kind of highlight that for a second, it has one question on the screen at a time. It provides a read aloud opportunity, and there's also an area on the bottom right corner, it's hard to see, it says, I don't know this yet. And we find that students really respond well to that, because once they're starting to see things that they maybe didn't learn, or maybe they even forgotten, they can press I don't know this yet, and they're not gonna have to like struggle through multiple questions of that. And then that could be something we work on. So I think that's a really great feature, and it helps students feel a lot more success. I'm going to now talk about just the skill plan, so that like third thing on that list, which again functions independently from the diagnostic. So as we all know, we learn state standards via our math resource Amplify. Their skills are taught via Amplify. That's our new research-based practice. But this is a supplement for that, so we can reinforce skills and instruction. So this is an example of where teachers can search for those skills. You'll see it actually has Amplify Math at the top, and they very nicely on IXL put the lessons that correlate with each lesson of Amplify. So if teachers would like to supplement and offer practice for students, they can offer those here. We're going to learn more about Amplify a little bit later in our presentation from my colleague Jeff. So I won't spend too long talking about Amplify, but teachers can search the standards this way, or they can also search for the standards in general and find lessons that align to certain standards that they'd like to teach. And this is usually on the grade level that they're teaching that correlates with what we are learning in the classroom. Now let's talk about the diagnostic, which is like the first 2 pieces on that other slide. So the diagnostic is that assessment tool that we are giving to all students in 5th through 8th grade, and it will determine a math level for students, and it addresses and points out specific areas of strength and or need. We can then provide support or enrichment based on the results of the IXL diagnostic. And we're also looking at ways in which we can use this for that readiness check before acceleration. And this is just one resource we have access to provide intervention. So I'm going to kind of provide you an example of what it looks like for the teacher. So what does the diagnostic tell us? So each student is given an overall level that connects with their grade level proficiency. So this is an actual student that I snapshotted for you guys. So it says their math level is at 680, which the first digit in that number corresponds to the grade level. So this is the 6th grade, but 80 would represent closer to the end of 6th grade. And then it is also organized for you into like these strands or subcategories. So you can see in measurement, we're at 360, so that's like mid third grade level. And then for algebra, we're mid seventh grade level. So this one student has skills and gaps and strengths kind of all over the place. Some are really high and some are that we need to work on to fill in some gaps. This is personal to every student based on how they do on their diagnostic. So this is different than the skill plan, which is connecting to Amplify and our state standards. This is based on student performance. I'm finding that this is really motivational for students. They feel really inspired to see like skills that they have that are above grade level, and then areas where they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I have second grade. They're motivated to work on those skills and really build them up. So I'm finding a lot of success with that. I just included 2 of the strands there, but the other strands are listed at the bottom of where else they're placed on a math proficiency level. And now what we do with that information. So this is what it will look like for a student. They'll be given an overall math level and then that score in each strand. And it identifies the specific skills that they need to work on. And again, it's tailored to their responses from that diagnostic, okay? So this tells us teachers who to target for intervention and enrichment. That might look like small group in class. That might look like I&E, which is our intervention and enrichment period. That might be me pulling students for what we call our math lab, which also takes place during intervention and enrichment, but allows me to pull students across grade levels and plan really targeted, purposeful remediation and enrichment. Or we can also talk about students taking a course we have called Math Supplement, which is an additional course students could take for math remediation. And during that course, students can work on this personal plan for enrichment as well as teacher support, of course. I'm going to turn it back over to Jason so we can talk about how this correlates with our acceleration procedures.
One of the things I didn't share about Rachel was a former student here. She went through Lower Marion and now teaches here, so we love that. And a parent here as well, yes. So just, you've heard different things about IXL. When we talk about how that plays into what we're trying to include with our readiness assessment, we're talking specifically about the diagnostic. So what is that level? What does that tell us in order to determine readiness or help determine that readiness? So the rubric, this is a piece of the rubric. So this piece of the rubric would be from 5th grade. And the only difference between 5th grade and 6th grade would be the numbers you see there. By the end of 5th grade, I'll take the example that Rachel had in her slide. She had a 680 on that slide. What that means is that student scored at the 6th grade level and basically has mastered 80%, that's the 80 part. 6th grade, 80% of the 6th grade standards. That's what that tells us. So this is a 5th grade. So the difference is by the end of the year, so if someone by the end of that year should be ready for the next grade level. So if someone's in 5th grade, on the end of year diagnostic, we would expect to see a 600. They don't know anything. They know 0% of 6th grade, but that's where they are. They are ready for 6th grade. These are the actual points we put in our new rubric to include IXL as one of our criteria. So what we did, and I talked a little bit about this with our cumulative assessments. When we first brought cumulative assessments on board, we had somewhat of a low bar. With IXL being included as part of our criteria for the first time, what we set as our bar was demonstration of grade level mastery. Now remember, this is to qualify students to accelerate and skip a grade. So grade level is what we set as the bar. Now, when we looked at the students who accelerated this year, current students who accelerated under the old criteria, every one of those students would have scored 10 out of 10 on this rubric. Every one of them. When we went a little deeper, we found that there were a number of students who would have earned 10 out of 10 points on this part of the rubric who were not accelerated last year. If this had been included, there may have been more kids that qualified for acceleration. So by including this piece, we may actually find more students who are ready for acceleration that we weren't finding using our old criteria. especially not in that 5th grade. So we know that multiple criteria is what's important. And I want to say this is a big deal. IXL is not the be-all, say-all. So the fact that there were some kids who didn't accelerate last year that IXL says you should maybe take a look at, that's one criteria point. That's like saying that student who does good on tests but struggles with a lot of other things should be accelerated. We really need to look at multiple criteria in determining readiness, not any one thing. So we know that when we look at all the available data for a student, that gives us the best picture of who's ready for acceleration, who has demonstrated a need to do that. Rachel talked a little bit about IXL and how it connects to Amplify. Amplify is our core math resource. It's brand new this year. It used to be called Desmos Math. Amplify acquired this company, and so now it's Amplify Math. For those of you who know, Amplify is also the company that makes Dibbles. So Dibbles testing in the elementary level, Amplify is the same company, so now they have a math component. This is our very first year of implementation, so we're about 4.5 months now into using this new product. It is our core math primary resource, and right now we have it in Math 6, Math 7, and Math 8 at the middle school. It's what I call a tech-forward product. It's a tech-forward design. What that means is this. If we were to go back 10 years ago, companies would make a book, and then they would give that book to their developers to create a tech version of that. Give me some technology that goes with those lessons. Companies now do it the other way. Companies now build a digital product and say, here's the digital product. Make me something paper that goes along with this as a supplement. So companies have flipped. We are now 25 years into the 21st century. We're in a very different place. Math doesn't look the same as it did 25 years ago. It just doesn't. So our methods and what you see in our classrooms looks a little different than when we were there, for sure. But it should, because the world's a different place. That said, things that are still important, that haven't changed. The ability to view student work in real time. There's ways to do that. The ability to provide immediate feedback to kids, always important. To build on conceptual understanding using an inquiry approach. It's something that for years and years here when I first got here, and like I said, almost 10 years now, we spent multiple PD days talking about inquiry-based instruction and what that looks like and how do we do that. So it's built into this. So this is a new product. It gets us to think a little different. But what I want you to know about this product, and I've said it before, but I'm going to say it again here, is it's not something where kids stare at a screen all day for the whole class period. It's not what it is, okay? But it draws kids in and allows us to do things with technology that we really can't do otherwise. Or it makes things easier with technology that were harder to do when we had to try to get around the whole classroom. So you're going to get to experience some of that today, which is really cool. This is where we're trying to take CCLB to the next level. You're going to get to be part of a Desmos Amplify Math lesson. And to do that, we're going to have Jeff Mashbitz, teacher at Ballackinwood Middle School, take you through what that looks like. You're going to get to play along. If you have a device, you can join in. He will take you through some of the experiences that students experience. He'll also show you a little bit about what the teachers see on their side and really highlight some of what makes this a really cool product. And in the end, remember, as Rachel said, IXL has the ability to connect to every one of these lessons. So if we went through a lesson using Amplify and students were still struggling and we needed extra support or another day of, I just don't feel like the kids are solid, we can then go to IXL and supplement in that way. It connects right to every lesson. So IXL is a supplemental resource for us, but that's one of the ways that it connects to our core. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff.
All right. Hello, folks. How we doing? Good. I think that was good by everyone. So when presented the opportunity to do this, I was really excited because the way I believe about instruction is the same way I believe about PD, and it's not just stand and deliver. It's like, let's have a learning experience together here. So folks in the room, board members, folks at home, feel free to head to student.desmos.com. When you get there, you don't need to sign in. You can just put in that code, and you'll be in the lesson. So don't worry about signing in. You don't have to. You can put your real name in there. You can connect your Google account if you'd like to revisit this. Warning, phones, I'm not sure what the experience is gonna be like. I would say tablets or laptops are better, but let's go for it. If you have a phone in there, hop on, and I'll see you over there in a few minutes here. I'll give you a minute just to get on, get your device ready. And it's gonna be really hard for me. I'm loud, I'll stand here when I'm speaking, but I'm gonna move a little bit.
Is this going to prepare me to help my 5th grader with her 6th grade math homework a little better?
Gotcha, yeah.
You're gonna have to stay there.
I'm gonna stay, I'll stay. But I might move a little.
I noticed we have some sharing of devices out there, so.
Oh yeah, if you don't have a device, find a friend and share screens with them. That's totally okay. Peek over a shoulder, or even better, put the laptop in between both of you.
We have verification
Yeah.
that's working on phones out here.
You'll notice when you get on, the activity is paused because I would love to launch this together. So I'm gonna be like flipping from teacher role to like facilitator role, and it's gonna peek behind the curtain, then back in the teacher. Yeah, question, yeah.
What grade level?
Yeah, so this is a 6th grade lesson. This is a middle of the year lesson, unit 6. So if I was a teacher role, I'm gonna hop into teacher role. Folks, I'm gonna leave that up there for 30 more seconds here. But if this were the real classroom, I'd be like, all right, class, today we're gonna play with scales, and we're gonna be weighing some different objects here. And that would be my launch. So I'm gonna get rid of this code here. Sorry, folks that haven't gotten on yet. A little refresh. All right. So on the screen in front of you here, in a moment I will unpause this, and all I'm going to ask you to do, and this is a very popular math routine, it's called a notice and wonder. So in a moment here, I'm going to give you the opportunity to drag this slider. It's going to click and drag, and I'm going to ask you, what do you notice and wonder as you drag that slider? Don't worry about complete sentences right now, just jot some ideas in. This is a safe environment. I'm going to go ahead and unpause you and let you play with that slider and tell me a couple things you notice or wonder. So folks that are participating on the stream, you might have some flashbacks of pandemic times. I'm going to ask you to maybe tab between like the screen that you're watching and like the screen that you're interacting on. So I'm going to give you about 10 more seconds to slide around and maybe jot down a thing or two you notice or wonder. And you got 3, 2, 1, and you'll notice a pause just happened there. And if you take a look at the screen in the room, or if you're on the stream at home, you can head back to the video screen that you're looking at here. And in the classroom, what I would show up is my teacher view. And the teacher view gives me an opportunity here to see student responses, see student work, and I'm able to view this in real time, either at my laptop or roaming around the room, so I'm not tied to a laptop, on this iPad. So I can see student work. And what can I do with student work? I can share it, right? So I have folks noticing when they move the balance, the weights move up and down. No one might recognize these names here because these names are all anonymous names of famous mathematicians of different races, genders, ethnicities, and opportunities for students to research these mathematicians are available to learn some more about them. But for now, I'm sharing student responses in a very safe and welcoming environment without making anyone feel a type of way about their response. And this will be how I launch the lesson. Today, folks, we're playing with these scales. Obviously, we're adult learners here, so we're going to move through this a little bit quicker than we would in a classroom. But I'm gonna move everyone along with me if you head back to the Desmos activity. And I find my mouse. On the Desmos activity, you're going to notice on the next screen, so everyone moved with me there. You should have noticed that if you're back on the Desmos activity. On that next screen there, you're going to see a dog on that scale. And the question is, how much does that dog weigh? And I challenge you to be a 6th grader. So I know we are going to know the right answer. I challenge you to put in the wrong answer, see what happens, and see what type of feedback you get and what that experience is like. And while you're there, I'm going to open a couple more screens just so you can kind of experience a couple more interactive activities within this lesson here. So go ahead and play a little bit more. Yeah, playing in math sounds like fun. So feel free to navigate on the top right to the next couple screens as I open them for you. You're not locked in anymore. You have some time to explore a few more screens on your own there. Feel free to hit the next button there at the top right. Once again, feel free to, my students love to try to break the tech, right? They try decimals, they try negative numbers, they try really, really large numbers, really, really small numbers. Like, we're inviting student input here in a very safe environment where wrong answers aren't just greeted with an X. Wrong answers are greeted with responsive feedback and a visual happening for students to rethink about their response and keep them moving forward in real time. I'm going to ask you to notice on the top of the screen, you might notice a chat bubble that appeared. So not only are students getting feedback, responsive feedback from the digital interactions, as the teacher, I can leave written feedback for them to push their thinking forward too. So once again, at the top of the screen, folks at home, folks in the room, board members, administrators, teachers, you might see a little chat bubble pop up there, and you can see some feedback I left for you. So that will be on the student screen that you're interacting with. Might remind you of like an iPhone notification. Folks that don't check their email often probably have that red button with a lot of numbers in it. You'll just see just one number in there right now, one notification. I'm going to pause you again. All right. So you guys are just students in a moment. Bringing you back to the teacher dashboard. So what I'm looking at as students are working, I don't like to be, it's really hard for me to be tied down to this podium right now. But in the classroom, I would be on my iPad either previewing student work, snapshotting student work, which I'll share in a moment. A lot of times I don't use the written feedback. I'd rather just go drop next to a student. But we know our students really well. Some students don't want any attention called to them or the teacher within like 5 feet of them, which is hard to do sometimes. But sometimes we can use that written feedback, here. But on my end here, I have the summary view. So folks at home, I ask you to come back to the video stream here. In that summary view, I see all my anonymous students here. I see a bunch of checks and X's. I see these green triangles. I see these gray triangles. So I can see where students are in real time within the activity. I can see students who've read my feedback. I can see students who are not physically on the activity. So if you're not, so a board member, do me a favor. Can you open a new tab and go to a website of your favorite website other than the Desmos activity here. I know, I'm asking you to not do math. Sorry. So if you're on a different tab and I come to pace you, because we're going to have a classroom discussion about our work here, you'll notice for folks that are on the tab have all jumped to the screen that I'm on, but there's a lot of blue friends that haven't moved there. Well, those friends are off task. So even as a teacher too, I can see who's with me and on task and following along, and students that are not on the activity right now. And obviously we would handle those when appropriate. Sometimes it's after class, sometimes it's a quick, hey, hop back onto the activity here. So just trying to show you some of the tech sides that we have as a teacher that are accessible to us on top of you getting that student experience. On top of students being able to get that interpretive responsive feedback, there's opportunities for students to actually type their responses. There's some accessible tools such as students can record their response or upload pictures of their work. That's also embedded in here. I'll show you a couple more interactive screens before I talk a little bit about the entire platform, the pedagogy that's embedded through here. So actually, let's talk instruction real quick. So in the classroom here, there's two major goals of this lesson. One is understanding a model for solving linear equations here. So this is a one-step equation. We're talking about finding a missing weight of a dog or a cat. We're talking about, and this would be, students are exploring here. The first part of this is students are exploring this idea, getting responsive feedback on their work. And as a teacher, we've all had now time to play. And on this screen here, we would talk about how does that tape diagram model that cat. And a lot of you might have responded to that on screen 5. And during that time while students are responding, I have an ability to see all student work. And behind the scenes, I could be selecting student work. And I have an opportunity to take that student work, and you'll notice here as I highlight someone's names, I wouldn't do this in front of the classroom, but I'm able to see who's who. So I know who's who, the students do not. But I can present these snapshots. And my favorite thing about this curriculum is that it is student-centered. It's not just the teacher stands and delivers the information. The students are starting to build some understanding of what's going on, and as a teacher, I can prompt discussions. How are these responses, similar or different? And the discussion about this idea of tape diagrams and what is a variable is centered on the students' ideas. And that launches the instruction. So students have an opportunity to explore, discover, and our job as a teacher is to formalize and teach the major ideas. But it's centered on the student experience first. So that's what the typical structure of a lesson is: a launch, monitoring their work, and then the connections that happen. And the ability to preview, select, sequence, and use student responses to move the thinking and the lesson forward. So in this lesson here, after this first part, we talk about how the tape diagram connects to the visual of the weights. We would define what a variable is, and then students would have an opportunity to record their thinking. And that thinking can be recorded in a notebook, or that thinking can be recorded in the physical copy of the textbook, which I'm going to pass out.
I have one that lives in my house.
Yes.
I know what this looks like.
We have an extra.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, here.
So this is grade 6, volume 2, meaning like second unit of the year, or?
So there's 2 student additions. So each year split in half. There's 1 to 4 units in volume 1, and then there's like another 4 units in volume 2. So this is unit 6. So this is, if you open to page 595, this lesson correlates with the textbook pages on 595.
So it's basically just so our kids aren't carrying around a 10-pound textbook? Awesome.
Some, and I will talk about this. There are some lessons that we use both. There are some lessons that we just use paper. There are some lessons where we just use digital. A lot of that sometimes is left to teacher discretion. Sometimes it's based on which is the best method of delivery, which is a nice thing for teachers. Like, so there's some days where we've had enough laptops. We need to close the laptops down, and we need to do it in the textbook. There's some days where the interactive features and the visual models that they interact with, like how could I do that? Like, I don't even remember how I could do lessons before this tech. You think about a lot of digital products, and different side of IXL, right? Outside of the diagnostic, there's like that practice piece of it. And sometimes the feedback students get is like a green check or a red X. And I think about how does that move thinking forward versus like that visual of the scale not being balanced. Or I don't know if anyone dropped in a huge value for X and and there's like smoke that appears like when that weight drops. Like, think about how that drives student thinking forward versus like a red X or a green check. You know, this is a learning tool and an experience for students and how they see themselves thinking about math and the value of their responses. So I would like to show that. So this textbook here is an opportunity for students and teachers to work on paper, but also record their thinking on paper. All right, I like to show one more thing on here just because it's my favorite part. So the second part of this activity is now, like we've talked about what an equation is, how a tape diagram measures it, what a variable is. So now we're actually going to talk about solving these. So there's a card sort activity. So on the next screen you're going to look at, if you head back over to the Desmos activity, there's an opportunity for you to show me that you've made that connection between the balance scales and the tape diagrams here. I'm only going to let you play for 5 more minutes because there's one more screen I got to show you. It's too good not to share. So friends, on the card sort, you're trying to match up the multiple representations that represent the same situation here. So great opportunity as a teacher to check for understanding. At this point as a teacher, I'd be going around to individual groups, providing some feedback and support. I'm only going to give you a little bit of time. This activity will stay live. So after here, if you're like, I got to go home and do more math, this activity is, keep the tab open. It won't go anywhere. We're laughing, but students will remember, they'll remember like, oh, remember that lesson about the fox? Going to pause you again here. On the card sort, I have an opportunity to either project this to students to see how they're doing with their matching so far. I can see some students have yet to engage. That's okay. I can also see an overview. I can see most incorrect common cards. Once again, all this is to spark conversation and move thinking forward in the classroom. So here's the most incorrect groups. I can see the most incorrectly sorted cards. This was the most common incorrect sorted cards. And like another part of this conversation is the conversation about the addition equations versus the multiplication equations. So let's talk about practice. So this is all fun, right? We're interacting, we're discovering. Let's talk about what practice looks like, right? So maybe we remember a situation in math where we come in today, all right, kids, we're going to learn how to solve equations. I'm going to show you how to do one. Maybe I'll show you how to do 2. Now we'll do one together as a group. And now you're going to work on these 10 in class, or maybe you're going to work on 15 or 20 at home. Practice looks different now. So one of my favorite ways that this curriculum shows practice is this thing called a challenge creator. So once again, I'm going to pace you, but stay with me just to show you what this looks like here. So students, it's not every lesson, but students have a lesson. Some lessons have this thing called a challenge creator. And in this challenge creator, students can make their own scale. So talk about student ownership here. Ooh, frog, alligator, fox. And I can adjust how many foxes I want, 3 foxes, 4 foxes. Now I'm talking about a multiplication equation. Maybe I can do 1 fox, and I can adjust the weight that is along with that fox, and I can adjust the other side of the weight. And we talk about differentiation. Ooh, I got too close. We talk about differentiation in the classroom. And to me, this is student-led differentiation, because students are able to make their own problem that they're ready to do. And students can try each other's problems, and they can try the harder ones that they feel like they're ready for, or try the ones that are more accessible to them. So I'm going to make my seesaw. So for you folks at home or here, you're going to be able to make your own in a moment. Hit next. And now I can't just make it if I don't know how to solve it. So you have to solve your own first. So I made my own here with the fox. I'll have to do math live here. This is scary, but good thing there's a calculator built in, 6.75 pounds. I can try mine, and I solved it, hopefully. Great. And then I get to submit a challenge. And as folks submit a challenge here, this screen will start to populate with all their peers' challenges for them to try each other's challenges. So think about what that experience looks like. Instead of saying, take out this worksheet or turn to page 237 in your textbook and do 8 through 24 even, we have an opportunity to try each other's problems. And not only that, we can turn off the anonymize feature, and I can walk over to Gavin, like, Gavin, I need some help solving your problem. So not only are we having some natural differentiation, practice looks different, but everything in this is about promoting student discourse. we'll hold that there. If you want to make your own challenge later and try some other challenges, you can do that. And then every lesson ends with a synthesis. So here's one more opportunity for not only students to summarize their learning, but the teacher to take the role of instruction, of the instructor here, and formalize all the ideas, and students leave with something tangible, whether that's notes or the direct instruction or the definitions for them to go home with. This lives with them forever. This lives with teachers forever. So we can revisit this screen 5 days from now. We can revisit this screen at a parent-teacher conference. We can revisit this screen at the end of a unit and say, wow, look what you thought about solving equations earlier and now where you've came 6, 7, 8 lessons later. And the last part of every lesson is the show what you know. Your exit ticket, your cool down, all the fancy names for it. But here's another opportunity for assessment. Throughout this lesson, there's multiple ways for assessing student thinking. They're able to assess their own thinking through that feedback. I'm able to see their responses throughout that. And then at the end, there's that final exit ticket on top of the unit level assessments, end of unit, mid-unit assessments, end of unit assessments, our cumulative, all the things, right? So we talk a lot about assessment. Multiple opportunities to assess student learning within the lesson. And at the end too, students can actually provide some feedback. Did they enjoy learning math today? Like, when do we ask kids, do they enjoy math class? And think about, like, I think a lot about, like, student experience, my own experiences in a math class. I think a lot about, as a teacher, when students come in, or parents at conferences say, like, I'm not a math person. But, like, to me, this curriculum, this interactivity is giving opportunities for students to see themselves as math people, because they're interacting it within a way that's not only engaging to them, but it's all problem-based. Everything lives in terms of a context. It's not just procedural problems. So let's talk some of the, I already talked about a lot of these things, but I'm going to head back to the slide deck. Oh, no. Oh, you can go to that slide deck. You're all right. Man behind the mirror. Behind the curtain. Yeah. Can you advance 2 slides? This is exciting. I wish I had someone like this. Oh, I don't know. This is great. All right. So, thanks. It was just Dr. Lilly the whole time. All right. So, interactive student activity screen. So, some of the talking points I've already kind of said, but just to make sure I hit everything I wanted to hit. The idea here is, like, math can motivate students. The problems, like, most of these contexts are engaging for students, not just visually, but, like, the animations and the context, but, like, them seeing the math and how their responses affect the math. It's inviting creativity. It naturally evokes wonder. Like I said, like that just because you got it wrong doesn't mean you stop. Like, I want to keep trying something else. And it's about how can you use math to understand the world around you. The responsive feedback I talked a lot about. We're not just getting right or wrong X's. The screens are responding to student thinking and showing what their answers actually mean and pushing their thinking forward. And they feel safe to do that. They feel safe to do that. The teacher facilitation tools, I showed you some of them. The opportunity to pause, pace, anonymize student responses, project student responses, sequence them in a way that makes sense for the learning progression, and the opportunity to leave written feedback in real time. One thing that goes not just with this curriculum, but it makes sense with our integrated curriculum, it's a problem-based curriculum where we try to build conceptual understanding first. We're not just saying, here's the procedure, do the procedure, repeat the procedure, now do it 10 more times. We're trying to build a conceptual understanding and then still hit the procedures later on for long-term memorization, not memorization, but long-term learning, right? So they can apply those skills for future years. Student thinking is valuable and made evident. Through the tools that we have here, students are put at the center and build confidence in their own mathematical thinking. And it kind of reframes what it means to be good at math. It's not just getting right or wrong answers. It's to persevere, being able to persevere when problem solving. But the teacher still plays a role to formalize the learning, to make sure the learning goals and targets are met. Talked about assessments embedded through each lesson and each unit. The one-to-one parity. So every digital lesson has a paper option. Some lessons are paper only. Even when using print, there are teacher presentation screens. So if there's times where you're like, we can't use tech today, some of those interactive screens you're able to project and use in the classroom and for the students to still benefit from them. And so teachers have flexibility when to make those decisions. And the materials are coherent. Like, they're spiraled throughout. My favorite 8th grade sequence is like it starts with translations, and then it goes into slope through the idea of dilations and similar triangles. I had never taught slope that way in my life. And the fact that students are understanding slope as ratios of corresponding sides of similar figures was so much better than saying, all right, slope is just rise over run, and here's a formula to memorize. So the ideas really make sense of how they build from one to another. And this was constructed similar to off of illustrative math, which is what Open Up was similar to as well. So the sequence makes sense for where we're going with our integrated curriculum as well. So I hope you enjoyed being a student. Those screens are all going to be open for you to play later. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to share that with you.
So I'm the one who has the pleasure and the lucky one that gets to go around and see all the cool things going on in all the classrooms across the district and seeing things like that. One of the things that is really neat to see with some of the tools that he shared is when they set the kids to an activity, and maybe they're with partners working through something, so they're talking through what they think, what they see, and then the teacher will show me their iPad and say, this is what I see. Hold on a second, these 3 groups need me right now. And literally they go to those 3 groups in the classroom and redirect and keep them moving. It's just really cool. It's one of those things that without the tech, you would have walked around to every student in the classroom, group by group, and maybe that group is the one that needed the most help, but I started here. So by the time I get there, we're ready to move on to the next activity. So the tech does have some really cool benefits, and you saw some of that tonight, and we really felt it was important to share that with this group, especially since this is a new product and we're 4.5 months in. So coming full circle, this was the gold star sequence. This is the one that we talk about a lot. This isn't something you'll see in many school districts. A lot of districts do reach out and ask us, how do you manage this? This is just a lot. Like, how do you have acceleration after every year, 4th through 8th, 7th grade? We do. We manage it because we think it's right, and we try to honor kids and meet them where they're at. This sequence hasn't changed a lot in a few years. The last change that was made to this sequence is circled right here in green. Originally, even when we added the additional 2 acceleration points after 5th grade, we had an evaluation and criteria attached to each of them. So in other words, students still had to qualify and demonstrate readiness before they had the opportunity to go through one of those summer programs. Around 2019 is when we made this change. What we did is we took away any of the qualifying criteria. It's okay, nobody heard it. We took away some of the qualifying criteria. So once students finish 7th grade, there's no qualifying criteria, there's no readiness. You know, through the years, we often get phone calls or emails that say, listen, I just know my kid's ready for acceleration. I want them to have that opportunity. So what we did is at the end of Math 7, at the end of that 7th grade year, we said, there's an opportunity for anyone that wants to try and take advantage of that. So anyone that feels that they want to try and accelerate in math, there are no gatekeepers after Math 7. Any student has the opportunity to take Math 8 as a summer course. That is a summer school course. It's something that students would sign up for. There is a cost associated with that. But it is an opportunity that has no gatekeeper whatsoever or no qualifiers. So it's there for every student who has not yet accelerated by the end of Math 7, 7th grade. This is the course we talk about the most, Math 7-8. Since its inception, this flow chart, this sequencing, Math 7-8 is the course that is the most challenging for us. We've had professional development days where we talk about things that are hard to teach or hard for kids to learn. This course is both. Math 7-8 is a course that does 2 years of math in 1 year of time. It's challenging. The pace is challenging. Getting through all the material is challenging. You literally are doing a new lesson every single day. It's difficult for kids. It's difficult for teachers. It doesn't feel like what you just experienced because you're moving at such a quick pace, you don't have time for a lot of the fun activities. It feels more like what math felt like when we took math class because you're getting through a lot of content. Now, we try really hard to infuse different activities into that course, but it is the course that I hear the most about from our staff members as being difficult for the kids and difficult for the teachers to deliver in time by the end of the year. So we talk about that stuff. We've been talking about Math 7-8 for several years. You got a chance to experience what Amplify Math looks like. One of the things that Amplify Math does, different than what we have right now. Math 7-8 right now, we use Envision Math. Envision Math has a 7-8 combo program. They have that. So the workbook you saw, we have a Math 7-8 workbook for Envision Math that we use to deliver this course. Amplify Math instead, and what research suggests, oops, wrong arrow, is moving some of those Math 7 topics back. So instead of a Math 7-8 course, where you're doing all of 7th grade math and all of 8th grade math in 1 year time, you're doing some of those 7th grade topics with the 6th grade. So it's like a 6-7 combo, and then the other part of 7th grade with the 8th grade course. So in other words, you would do 3 years of math in 2 years of time instead of 2 in 1. So really 1.5 years of math each year. More manageable for kids, more manageable for teachers, more opportunity to really dig in and develop that foundational understanding that's critical to move into higher level math. So this is something we're talking about. We've been talking about how do we address that Math 7-8 course for a long time. So later this year, we plan to bring a proposal. It's nowhere near ready, but we plan to bring a proposal to the board to look at with our suggestions of, is this something we can do? Is this something we think is best for kids? Is it something that, is right? And we think it is. But this flow chart, as great as it is, and as much as we talk about it, when you move even part of a course to another course, it has a ripple effect. So there's a whole bunch of things that change with all those arrows in there if we move part of a course. So that's what we're working through, is what that would look like and how it would impact the rest of this chart. So that's what we hope to bring for further discussion later this year. But just know, we're always looking at ways to try and improve the experience for our kids. So thank you for this opportunity tonight. I really appreciate it. And thank you to both of our teachers that came out tonight to share what they shared.
Thank you so much. That was fantastic, and I loved the playtime. That was really fun and quite a breath of fresh air into from our normal routine. It was really fun. I am sure that this group is like chock-a-block full of questions. Who is desperate to go first? No?
We just go down.
Todd, do you have any questions?
Sure.
Go for it.
A few of them. So it seems like there's a lot of effort spent and concern in the community on how to most effectively, efficiently move children vertically through this curriculum. Math 7-8 to integrated math, Math 5 to 6. And there's different opportunities for that through the bridges and the summer programs, and that makes sense to me. But I do think that there is often a pressure to accelerate kids too fast, too soon through this. And so the question I have is, what effort from a curriculum development standpoint is being put into creating opportunities not for going vertically faster, but for going horizontally at the grade level that the kid is at? So if you have a child who's doing pretty well in, level 6 or whatever, one option may be to accelerate that kid to level 7. And for some children, that may be the right move. But for other children, it may make actually far more sense to stay at level 6 and understand the connections. Because what is math, actually? To you guys, what is math? From a curriculum perspective in Lower Marion, what is
Dr. Ricky, this isn't your lecture.
Yeah, so the point is, it's not about the numbers and it's not about the formulas, right? What it is about patterns and connections, and the numbers and the formulas are just a language and a tool that you can use to develop that understanding. So the question is, are there ways how much effort is being put into ways to, as Kimberly Garrison says, and she's right about this, like every child can use enrichment, right? So what about enrichment at the grade level to further that? You mentioned it a little bit, but like that deeper understanding. And might some children be better served by staying at that grade level, understanding really not actually how to do, how do you divide fractions, but why, when you divide a fraction, you just multiply by the reciprocal? Why does that work? Do you really understand that before you go to the next level?
Yeah, what I'll say is that, those are things we talk about. And I'll say for myself, one of the things I've always said is math doesn't have a whole lot of value unless you know how to use it and apply it, right? Math in context, that's the big deal. What does it mean? How does it work? When do I use it? Why does it work? Those kind of deeper questions. So those are the things we really try to hit on. And to do that, to your point, the grade level classes, they have a lot of time. There's more time to get through a curriculum when you're in that 1 year, one grade level at a time than when you try to accelerate and do 1.5 or 2 years at a time. You lose a little bit of that. So there's definitely an advantage to that. There are a lot of people, and I say this too, and they would tell you that I talk about the race to nowhere in math. I believe that's real. Getting there faster doesn't make it better. Having that strong foundational understanding is what's really important for you to be successful later on and understand how math works and why it works the way that it does. Come on, you got to talk into the mic.
Just because I spoke about like our curricular resources, like I teach integrated, I've taught integrated 1, integrated 2, and the amplified Desmos and AF, so what's nice about the core resources we have there are opportunities for are you ready for more, or there are these explore screens, and that exact example about dividing fractions, there's a whole flower potter lesson that they're going into, how many of these potters fit in there and the size of the potter. So the resources we have support building that conceptual understanding and not just going to the shortcut or the algorithm. I think the decisions we're making as a department are going towards that. But I do think, I think your question is fair, but I know the resources we have support building that deeper understanding. So we're not just moving kids along because they know how to do it and the quickest way to do it, but the how and the why.
But this is where I'm getting lost, and maybe it's because we've strayed so far from the original intent of these conversations that we started over a few months ago. We're not, though. I mean, I love the lesson, I love the activities, I love the passion behind it. But when we look at our student data in this district and across this country, which every single child dropped in 2022 with the NAEP data. So we can say we're doing all these things and we're not rushing the kids. There is a race in math because you can't get into actual courses that you want in college if you don't have those standards. You can't get into that. So it isn't a perceived race for no end. It is an issue both in our grades, it's an issue across our country, and it's an issue where we're talking about all these great programs, but we're not seeing a positive change forward. So I kind of want to back up a sec and say, what is the goal of all these tools is to say, how are we going to affect math grades across the K through 12 spectrum in Lower Merion and move those needles forward? And I have a lot of questions around this, but I really do want to get back to what's the question at hand. We talked so much about tech tonight that I got lost about what the original question was 3 meetings ago. And I had to remind myself, it's about the gap that we're seeing in math, a significant gap. And it's concerning to all of us. And the presentation was excellent tonight. I really enjoyed it. I have a million side questions about that. But when we talk about how do we teach good math and how do we do these pieces, what I want to understand is where's the proof that all of this great teaching that we saw tonight is working, and where do we need to pivot as well? Because that's really where the rubber meets the road. We can say all these things and do all these things, but when we say, look what we're learning that when we give the kids this, and this, that's a better combination. And we know with math, it's not just the online tech. It's the manipulatives. It's writing it down. It's visualizing these pieces. It's talking to each other about it. It's getting back to conceptual ideas of space and math and orientation to do all those things. So I guess one of my questions is, great presentation, excellent, as always. I love our Lower Merion teachers. I love math. I'm the kid that loved it from birth, and wish I had teachers like you, because I can't even imagine how good it would be. There's no doubt that what you're doing in the classroom isn't excellent, but we're still missing something somewhere around math. And what are those pieces? And I want to not get so lost in one tool and step back to the balcony and say, what are all the tools we need to put on our kids' tables? Because right now I feel like we've talked a lot about tech and a lot about IXL, and I could care less about just talking about those pieces, and I want to see the whole concept. And Todd, I'm going to get you a t-shirt that says, what is math?
So I just came from this graduate seminar that you told us, actually introduced us to, and it was like an hour-and-a-half movie, and actually we should have it for the program. It would be great. It's $700, totally worth it. But one of the things that came, that's where the question, what is math actually? Because a lot of children are afraid of it. They think it's about the numbers and and it's really not. So anyway, that's where I came from.
And I mean, I feel it's like every special ed teacher goes over and over again with kids who struggle in math, is to say, how do we really get these concepts right? Because it's when whatever math you get exposed to, when you have those strong concepts, you hold on to them. So it is a much more existential, I think, but really important that we think about what are the tactics that we're doing to start to move these needles. So I would flip that question and wonder at the next conversation on math is, are we showing data that is saying the kids that did Desmos 2 years ago got different scores in the PSSA 2 years later? Some kind of way to connect and say these three things are helping this. I know it's never one. Okay, that I think is a summary of all my questions.
Yeah, I'm
just-
thinking big thoughts on that. Did you want to address some of that? Or?
Yeah, I think it's a totally valid question. I think the challenge right now is we're 4 months into a new product, so it's hard to say now that it's moved the needle, because it's literally brand new this year for the first time.
So how much is new? So we've changed how much of the math system in how many grades that is new?
Right now, 6, 7, and 8.
So it's the percentage of new in 6, 7, and 8. K through 4 is how long has that math system been in place? Curriculum, tools, all the pieces.
The K through 4 math program is up for renewal right now. So it's something we're exploring right now, this year. So it's it's another presentation we'll bring to the board about elementary math resources.
And then 9th through 12th.
9th through 12th is a whole bunch of different courses. That's when we shifted to integrated math. It's an open source resource, so it's more of we've taken it, made it our own, so it's not just a program that we use from somewhere else. It's kind of what we've made our own.
Okay, again, I'd like to go back to the next conversation and look more holistically at math. Because the other thing that chart does not do it for me, I'm really confused by that chart. Every single time I see it, it looks like a neuron cell, and if it was a neuron, I'd be more comfortable with it, because that's what it looks like. It's the K through 4. When we look at, there was a study that just came out a couple months ago. When we look at what happens in K through 4 in math, all these summer enrichments, you've lost a mark there. And that's concerning too. So when we look at math, I really do wonder how much we want to look at the entire system.
When you say it's lost a mark, do you mean that not enough is being covered during the school year, or that the summer programs aren't doing enough? Or I'm just curious as to where you think the
if our
gap
kids
is.
are coming into this on-roads and off-ramps neuron system of math and enrichment, if they're at a deficit by 4, then we've already lost the mark. We're not going to be able to catch them up no matter. They'll just move
I
back
see
in.
what you're saying.
Because what I don't understand about the neuron, again, is if you're not successful in the summer, first of all, you have to be able to do the summer program. Do we provide transportation for the summer program? It's online. Oh, it's online.
In the younger grades at least it was.
It's online,
It's changed.
which, so no manipulatives there whatsoever.
Some of them might.
Do they send any manipulatives home with the kids?
No.
Okay, so loss of a tool for math, it's online. And then if you're not successful in it, you go back to 4?
No,
You go back, you go to the next grade, your next grade level, on-level course, yes.
On grade.
So, yeah, so if you're in Math 4 and you do the Summer Bridge 5 and you're not successful in completing whatever the benchmark is, then you just go to
You go
regular
to 5.
Math 5 instead of accelerating into Math 6 in 5th
So
grade.
if you have difficulties in 4 with 4,
you just go.
and you just go to 5?
That's always the case.
Okay.
One of the things that we haven't talked about, and I feel like this has taken us in a different path, but when I talked about how there used to only be 2 acceleration opportunities, there also were no summer bridges. Students literally would just skip a whole course and go to, like, literally skip a grade. So you would go from 4 to 6 with not experiencing 5 in any way. There was no summer bridge. So the summer bridge is something that's been added since my time here too.
Oh, yeah? Gosh.
Do we have the data on the summer bridge? I'm really looking to say, when we look at these math on-roads, again, it's all trying to get to the point of our kids doing better. Do we have data on how many kids take it? How many kids are more effective and moving forward and gapping those issues?
And I'll piggyback to say particularly those students who fall into the categories that we were particularly interested in, that were in that opportunity gap.
Yeah. We can try to pull some data together.
That'd be really great. I think that would help give the board and the community a sort of more, I won't say hands-on, but for lack of a better euphemism, view of what's going on, for a different way of us understanding that. Anna?
Yes. Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you for demonstrating the tools. I know our district is new to them, but they are best practice tools that have been being used in other districts and schools for a little bit, so it's great to showcase them and how you all have been using them, so thank you. I wanted to clarify a few things. Similar to Curry, I'm stuck on this rubric and the evaluation criteria because my biggest challenge here was I would change the goalpost on kids and families. So I heard you say that students will be evaluated by both rubrics this year. I want to clarify and make sure that students will be admitted on either rubric. So if you meet the criteria for either rubric, you will be admitted to the acceleration.
Yes.
Okay. The reason I just also want to name that again is the actual, in addition to IXL, the score bands were changed in the new rubric that includes IXL. So I wanted to just clarify that students will be admitted on either rubric. In the next presentation, I'm also curious if we are changing the entry criteria, if we can understand when that will be communicated to parents, so parents know that there will be a change made and understand if there is a possibility that a change will be made again or what that might look like. Let me just go through. The other thing that's just top of mind is wondering, and again, I know it's a new program, is how are we using the teacher data by classroom being broken down to assess the effectiveness of our different classrooms and who's meeting the needs of what? It is exciting that we found some students through IXL that should have been in accelerated. I want to know how are those students having their needs met now if we've just discovered this, but also it highlights our need to really pull back the layers of what's happening in grades before that due to the subjective criteria, students weren't admitted because the majority of the criteria on that 2-column chart is subjective. And I think to Curry's point, if we pull back some of these layers, we can get to more of the root issues that I'm positive that we all are trying to solve to ultimately make a difference in the gaps that we see. I guess the biggest thing I would just keep pulling back on is how are administrators using the data of teachers' classrooms to support teachers in implementing the data? Because just as much as IXL is a diagnostic for students, it's a diagnostic and a real check on how are teachers teaching the practices, who might need more support, which teachers can we rely on for additional support. So my biggest concern and question is how are we, with the rubric issue resolved for now, how are we really looking at K-4 in conjunction with middle school and integrating both to see the change we want to? And if you have a timeline for doing that.
So there's been changes. K-12 has only recently come under my purview, middle of last year when Nancy Aconcha-Mesa retired. So, you know, in its initial phases, and as I shared, the resources that we use in elementary right now are expiring this year. So it's a big undertaking. So right now, there's a pilot team. We're looking at resources. We're deciding what we want to pilot. We do plan to bring something to the board later this year, a plan for next year.
Okay. And then for fourth graders in particular, will it have an impact on their opportunity to excel in the change in curriculum?
The program, like the resource we use to deliver our math program doesn't impact those opportunities.
Okay.
They stay in place.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to quickly read from Ms. Garrison, who's online, before we get to Sarah and my comments. Kim says, I was wondering if our district hosts events such as Pi Day and Fibonacci Day parties to celebrate math and make it more enjoyable for students. These activities can bring the subject to life. Also, do we have math circles where students can explore math in a more interactive and collaborative way?
We had Pi Day at Harrod, and it was a lot of fun. Teachers brought all different pies. They wear the shirt.
I'm fully behind pie in any.
It brought excitement. It was fun to see the teachers excited about it, and it transcends to students.
Okay, so Abby didn't have any questions. Sarah, you want to?
A few questions, some a little bit piggybacking on what Curry had said, looking at the chart and the students who participate in the summer bridge programs. Wondering also about data, but data as far as the students that do those programs, then are we tracking how they are doing in the accelerated course? If they're doing well in it, if they're needing additional support in it, what data do we have on that? And then also for the summer courses, how long are the courses? I know we said they're online, they're in the summertime. How many days, how many weeks? Like what's the amount of time that kids are spending in these courses?
So it's different, I would say, for different kids. One of the reasons that it became virtual option, we do have teachers available 2 days a week for in-person if students want to come in for support. But the reason it became a virtual option mainly was because a lot of kids have other summer things going on, whether it's camp or family vacations or things like that. And again, there's been so many changes over the last almost 10 years to how things were, and even some of the attempts to make changes. Originally, it was a face-to-face course, and then we'd have students turning down the acceleration because they couldn't be there. So we tried to make it more flexible, so that's where that came from. The courses are open about 6 to 8 weeks, depending how students work through that. It's a work at your own pace. And I will say, like, kind of going back to your original point about the summer courses, it's like if it's a summer bridge for Math 6, like it's the essentials of Math 6. It's not the full Math 6, right? So it's the skills that we think are most important for a student to advance to the next grade level. So it really depends on the student and how much they want to do and how much time they spend day in and day out. When they finish, they're done. They don't have to take 6 to 8 weeks. They just need to get through the material and the course and demonstrate understanding of it.
Okay. Sorry.
We're just going to further expand. It's a number of lessons, and you can't go on to the next one until you pass it. And then if you need help, you can tap in.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm just curious if we're saying that Math 7-8, we're finding that putting 2 years of math in 1 year is a lot for students, a lot for our staff to get through. Essentially putting students through an entire year of a math curriculum in 6 to 8 weeks, how that's working or what potentially needs to be tweaked going forward with those programs. And then do the Summer Bridge programs have a cost associated with them?
The Summer Bridge programs do not. The only one that does is Math 8 because that's an actual summer course.
Okay, thank you.
What's the cost on that?
Where's Rich Marta? How much is that right now? Oh, I thought you had an idea. You just talked with Andros recently.
So, but there are assistance programs available also for programs like that for families for whom it would be a hardship to afford? Okay.
Yeah, we take care of free and reduced and things like that. Yeah, there's.
Okay, and if a family was interested in taking advantage of that, who would they contact to get that assistance?
They just reach out to the school. We have their
To their
information on file.
to their counselor, to their principal? I'm just trying to make this resource accessible for the families.
Honestly, it could be anyone. If they said, I want to take Math 8, I'm interested in that. It could be the counselor, it could be their teacher, it could be a classroom administrator, a school administrator, or it could be me. Any one of us that get that information know how to navigate it to the right place.
Okay, great. I am sorry, I try to pare down my list usually, but this was a really good presentation and I have a lot of questions. I will try to be as succinct as I possibly can. I'm sorry, could you guys have your conversation?
Is he still trying to balance the foxes? Is that what's going on? No? Okay.
They're trying to balance the foxes in your diagram. So thinking back to the beginning of the presentation, if we have different ways of assessing readiness, the assumption is that there will be situations where students doing well and ones where they're doing poorly, ostensibly, if you take your example of the cumulative test versus a unit test. How do we determine where it's important to value success, and how do we value where students are not meeting required benchmarks when we're assessing whether or not a student would be a good fit to accelerate or to stay on their grade level?
I think the answer to that is that's why we look at lots of different things and try to make that determination. I think different kids struggle in different places and different kids excel in different places, and that's why we look at all those things. Rachel has shared a lot about IXL. Rachel is one of our math specialists, so Rachel is one of those people that's pulling kids and works in that I&E period and runs a math lab and things like that. So when we see those different things, and there's so much we could talk about, but we have Link It, which is a program now. We're doing our assessments. We're recording our assessments there. They're available for people to dig into and see what's going on. So we have lots of different things, data teams, where when we see things like that that are of need, we have ways to get kids to where they need to be, to work with the right people to try and hone those skills and shore things up. So it just depends. If it's someone with assessments, there's lots of reasons that could be. So we would dig into why are we struggling with assessments when I see you doing so well when we do the activities in class. There's different things that can happen with different kids, and we try to address them individually.
So the root of my question was really, as we're having this complex discussion about the appropriateness of different rubrics to evaluate whether a student should be eligible for acceleration, that was kind of what I was getting at, where those value judgments are being made on different items and how that decision process is working as we put together the rubric. Because I think as educators, we all understand that rubrics are supreme. I've never met anybody who loves a rubric better than a teacher. I love me a rubric as well. But it's how we put what value on it, whether we're talking about the 5 points first. Okay, your example with the IXL with certain numbers got you at 10 points and certain numbers got you 5 points. Well, why didn't we do it that if you got 510, you got 1 point, and 520, you got 2 points, and 530, and this may not be a conversation we have to have now, but it's something that I've been thinking about as we're going through, is that I would really be interested to hear how we make those value judgments. I'm not saying that one is better than the other. I'm really just looking for understanding, and that is sort of an avenue of transparency I'm looking at. But that's good. My next one, I have a feeling the answer is no, but I'm curious if the IXL diagnostic is ever re-administered, so we look at it as pre-test, post-test?
That's exactly what we do.
Oh, it is? Oh, okay.
Beginning of year, end of year.
Okay, so are there are students that would meet the criteria for IXL that did at the end of the semester, and that would qualify them for acceleration, that did not meet that qualification at the beginning of the course?
That's why we only look at it at the end of the course.
Wonderful.
As far as for acceleration purposes.
Okay. My understanding, and this could be scrambled in my brain because I have sat through several years of these meetings, but my understanding was that when we first got Desmos, it was a free program.
Desmos itself is a whole separate thing. Desmos was an online calculator tool and a way of creating lessons online that was free during COVID. It wasn't Desmos.
So Desmos is not even free anymore.
It is for that.
Oh, for just the fancy calculator.
Right.
Okay.
But Desmos, the curriculum, Desmos, the program, which is now Amplify Math, there is no Desmos anymore. Desmos is that, Amplify is the math program.
So is that why Texas Instruments is lowering their prices on graphing calculators? Because the students aren't required to have a $150 calculator to take 11th grade math any longer? Sorry, that was a tangent. You don't need to answer that.
I don't want to answer it, but I think it's important to say this. Amplify, which uses the Desmos calculator as part of their program.
Yeah.
That's actually the tool that's available to students when they take the PSSAs or Keystones online now.
Oh, that's great.
So our kids are already getting exposed to the calculator tools that will be available to them when they take those assessments, which are required to be digital as of next year.
Go for it.
How long have we had Desmos?
Desmos or
Yeah.
the math program?
Desmos. The math program we looked at tonight was Desmos, correct?
Yes.
How long have we
Well, it's
had?
Amplify. I want to make sure we're clear with the
Okay,
language.
so that's what I'm trying to understand. Just this year, this is the first year.
We
This
just
is
approved
the
that
first year, yes.
at the end of last year for $265,000, I think it was, for 3 years.
Yeah. It's brand new this year.
Desmos, the calculator
How could
Desmos,
they-
I believe it was 3 or 4 years, right? It started during the pandemic.
Yeah, so.
That's correct.
And there's just something in the way you answered that confused me. It sounded like there was work on this last year around these pieces.
We did a pilot last year, and then we adopted, and this is the first year of implementation.
Did we have any data from that pilot?
Like what? Like what kind of data? We presented all the summary of the survey data from the teachers and the pilot
And student
why
data.
we picked that over the other program.
Yeah, I remember the time when you presented it. It was actually
Yeah.
Jen Guddioso, I believe, presented it. Do we have data on how the kids effectively used it, and did their grades change at all?
It was a 4-week pilot. It's hard to see a huge change in 4 weeks.
We didn't look to measure the data, correct?
The kids only would have taken one assessment.
I mean, to be honest with you, I've measured one instrument of data to see impact. So I think 4 weeks can give you a pretty amount of hours, but we did not look at any data outcomes and can cross them over with any students that didn't have those last year, did we?
No.
Okay. That I can skip. Okay. So I'm thinking about the 7-8 and whether there is merit if teachers and students are struggling with a combined 7-8 program, if it makes sense to have the normal path to go from Math 6 to Math 7 to Math 8, and then to have it as like an alternative acceleration where students are reevaluating whether it makes sense to go into an accelerated 7-8, to have that track rather than just, God, I need your graph back up here, because I'm doing it in my brain. But am I being clear at all to have an option for students to go from the accelerated Math 6 in 5th grade and to have most of them then go to Math 7 unless they then re-accelerate to a Math 7-8 and then we're having other levels, or is that just complicating our path too far?
You're saying an intermittent level.
I'm saying basically, just because they accelerate once does not necessarily mean they need to accelerate twice. Because I have a kid who's in that accelerated Math 6 now, and I will tell you, I did not know until we saw this presentation that she was gonna finish with 8th grade math by the end of next school year. And I don't know that that's, maybe it is the right approach. I don't know if that's if that's what we're struggling with. Does it make sense necessarily to continue that steep acceleration and rather kind of let people level out a little?
Yeah, I want to understand what you're saying. So you're saying a child is in math 6, the accelerated math 6, right?
Yes. then they
So-
automatically go to this math 7, 8.
And so what are you saying? So
I'm saying
simplistic.
that if your child is accelerating from math 4 to math 6, that instead of putting them straight to math 7, 8, that most children then go to math 7, and then they have to reevaluate for acceleration to math 7, 8.
Well,
So
is that an option? Can you
it's what
go from
happens with-
accelerated math 6 to just normal math 7?
it's what happens with the regular math 6. At the end of math 6, kids either go to math 7 or math 7-8. So that exists, is that those students that have already accelerated, that's their accelerated path. But what I can tell you is, if someone went into accelerated 6 and didn't want to go to 7-8, we would definitely let them be in math 7.
Of course, but we all know as we're talking about student pressure, that students are aware of the ones who have to drop down, and that unless it is really, really killing them, the likelihood that they are going to voluntarily drop down versus voluntarily go the extra mile to opt into acceleration is a different thing. And I'm not saying it's something we should or shouldn't do, but I'm saying as we're considering other options, like you specifically said, right now, you're talking about putting together a proposal for the board of what the option is to address that. I was simply suggesting that that could be something for consideration as we're talking about just how to tackle this. I mean, this is a lot of coursework, because effectively you're talking about going from, in 5th grade and 6th grade, you're talking about getting 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade math. And that's a lot to do, especially when you add in that they're going to a new school and a new grade band and mixing in puberty. So, Sarah, did you have more to add?
Yeah, I think just to simplify it a little bit, so I think, just to clarify, are you looking essentially for an arrow that goes from math 6 for 5th grade to math 7? That arrow is not existent right now on this chart? And then maybe an evaluation between math 6 for 5th grade and math 7, 8?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And I realized that I had a lot of in-depth questions there. I wanted to say this presentation was awesome and that I really, really loved the little lesson. This was really fun, and it was delightful to have real insight into the tools and the skill that our staff has and uses respectively. And so I appreciate all of you. And one more.
Sorry. As we're thinking about our curriculum for math for elementary school, just if we can keep in mind when we're thinking about that screen time for our younger students and how that potentially can impact them if we are looking towards more digital tools for them rather than more hardcover type of books.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
And Abby has a question. Go for it.
Just to kind of piggyback on all of this, when we think about how kind of drastic it looks, how urgent it is, and it is, considering that for the K through 4 folk, identifying some trends and really helping to create a culture of math instead of this sort of pressure cooker culture, asking questions and learning instead of getting it right or staying behind, I think is really important, especially when we think of the youngest kids, because they catch on really quickly. So if we set the right tone, I think it could help too.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone, for that presentation. Thank you, Dr. Lilly. We are going to move on now to... Oh, and we have some comments from online. I apologize. I was told that about 20 minutes ago, and we've been having such a robust discussion. Ms. Buckman, you have the floor.
Sure. There are a couple from a couple people, so I'll put theirs together, if that's okay. Michelle McGill from Ballackinwood. Will a student be able to advance in math if they do not take the summer program, which requires a 5-hour daily commitment? Do we have another way to advance if a student does not want to spend the entire summer completing the math program? And Ms. McGill goes on further to say, Why are we still in the position where administration is able to say, I can pull together some data? Why isn't data collection the norm in Lower Merion School District? If we do not have clear goals, objectives, measures, and an organized effort to collect data, how do we know if what we are doing is working? This moving blind in the dark needs to stop. I hope the acting superintendent will implement goal planning and data collection immediately, and the board enforces this as the norm in Lower Merion School District. There are also, you read Ms. Garrison's comment, Lorraine Carter of Ardmore. How does the sequence of integrated math courses lead, if it does, to advanced math courses on the high school level, including honor courses, pre-calc, statistics, et cetera? Further comments from Ms. Carter. Do students with an IEP have an opportunity to access any accelerated math course from math literacy or math applications 1, 2, 3, or 4? And is there any performance data on students identified as historically underperforming, utilizing the opportunity to move to accelerated math during the school year or over the summer? What is the success rate? And that's the conclusion of the comments.
Thank you. I think do we have any in-person comment from the community? You want to come on up? Just come on up to the podium and go ahead and state your name and what town you live in the district.
Hello, Fatima Rogers, Bala Kenwood. I'll make it very brief. First, thanks for the presentation, Dr. Lilly, our teachers. I see my principal is in here. Thank you so much for spending the day at work and being here in the evening with us. Just a few points. Dr. Lilly said math brains mature different for different kids, and utilizing how do we determine readiness, adding IXL and balancing the rubric, utilizing the old and the new. So I appreciate the fact that we rubber stamped that we're going to utilize the old and the new criteria, because based on the old criteria, the rubric is different. For cumulative assessments, if you had a B or an A, you would get 10 points. On the new one, a B is 7 points, even though by Lower Merion standards, A and a B is excellent work, and just off my memory. Our teacher here, I have teacher Rachel, I'm sorry, I don't know your last name. Thank you so much, parent, resident, fabulous teacher, I can tell. She talked about the students being assigned plans, skill plans, personalized plans, and intervention and enrichment skills for IXL, and actually put up sample students IXL, which looked very similar to my daughter's, because measurement was in the 3rd grade, and then here we were with algebra in the 7th grade. So it looked very, very similar. And then talked about things and strategies that you can use. Everyone knows I adore the teachers at Bala Kenwood. All the teachers that we've had in Lower Merion School District have been nothing other than fabulous. I just have to say that Dr. Lilly said there is a beginning of the year assessment for IXL. There's an end of the year assessment for IXL. However, at Welsh Valley, they're doing a mid-year assessment. So there's a difference. At Welsh Valley, they're using the skills, the skill plans, the personalized plans. My friend Crystal over here, her daughter is at Welsh Valley, and those are the things that they're using with her 6th grader. However, it's not what's happening with my 6th grader. No dig on Lower Merion, because what my daughter is receiving is an outstanding and a superlative education. I will stamp that everything that the teachers are doing is amazing. I won't put any of that to the side. I do have to ask, when we add in criteria in December, and I understand that this is what has been traditionally done, not quite fair to me, because as you see, I sit here with my data binder for my daughter that I've been maintaining over her years, and this is something that we've been looking at since 4th grade. I had a lot of conversations with a lot of people in a lot of different places around when do you look to accelerate. And ideally for us, what worked for our family is 6th grade going into 7th grade, 7, 8, because math 7th and 8th grade standards more so overlap. So we looked at it like she wasn't really skipping a year, even though you are combining 2 years. However, you have the opportunity to get integrated 1 in 8th grade, versus if you stay on that grade level track, not only are you 2 years below your peers. You don't look like your peers. You're 2 years below your peers. And when you go to take your SATs, you don't have the necessary content mathematically to take the SATs. So acceleration is something that we look at it because we want her to be exceptional and go on to college. Just in Lower Merion, we lead to serve is what we're looking for her to do, to look great for Lower Merion School District. So I guess my question is, and I'm not looking for it to be answered right now, is what is the expectation for our leaders to ensure that IXL is being utilized if we're holding our students accountable to it? How are we holding students accountable to a piece of data that we're not holding our building level principals to or our teachers to? Thank you so much, and I really appreciate everything that everyone does. I adore Mr. Hunter and every teacher that my daughter has had in this school district. And of course, Megan, you know I love you for serving. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that feedback, and I'm sure it'll be considered as we're discussing these things going forward. And Ms. Buckman has one more comment from the chat.
Yeah, and actually, they were having technical difficulties, but we've got it. Lisa Prosnitz of Penn Valley, thank you all, and I love having our teachers present. Thanks to the board for a thoughtful discussion. While I appreciate the sentiment behind the I don't know it yet button on IXL, I wonder if there are kids who may not know the answer to a particular question, but that doesn't mean they don't know the answer if the question is asked in a different way. How do we know how effective IXL is in understanding our students' learning and abilities? What are our goals here? One discussion that I am not hearing is about the reliance on technology in our students' general curriculum, and I hope that as a community, administration, and board, we can have a broader discussion about how we want to support our children's education with technology while still maintaining the integrity of personal relationships. So much is lost when teachers are writing in chat bubbles without directly interacting with our students, and our students are gaining the benefits from handwriting. When I hear that the students get more engaged with technology, what I hear is that we aren't truly engaging them. More tech, especially given all that we are learning about the impact of tech on kids' brains, cannot be the best. Also, can you please share information about why there is a fee for math acceleration, especially for students on free and reduced lunch? The fee is waived for students on free and reduced lunch.
Let me just reiterate that the fee is waived for students on free and reduced lunch, that most of our student programs or summer programs have fees, and that they're waived if there's financial need, and there are financial support programs available. And as I stated earlier, if you just talk to somebody in your district, your school counselor, or school administrator, your child's teacher, they can help you get set up with those resources.
She goes on to say, as a follow-up to Carrie's comments, what are the makeup of students who are able to take calculus by senior year versus those who are only able to take pre-calc in their senior year? I would like to better understand the gap that exists and still haven't seen data to help us better understand. Parents have also expressed a desire to better the implications of the accelerated program earlier, especially for parents who are the first time through the district oldest kids. If their student stays at grade level math, they will not be able to take calculus in their senior year, which could greatly limit their college selections. Parents think that it's grade level math and not a drop down. It would definitely be appropriate for some students, but parents need to better understand implications. Also, I would still like to understand what happened to the one-to-one tutoring program. It was known to be effective.
Okay, let's move on to our next presentation, which is on the PAYS survey with Mr. Marta and Ms. Walker.
That's okay.
Hello and good evening, everyone. Tonight, we're going to present on the Pennsylvania Youth Survey, or else known as PAYS. The Pennsylvania Youth Survey, or PAYS, is conducted every year in the fall of odd-numbered years. Beginning with the year of 2013 administration, PAYS was offered at no charge to any school district, public, private, charter, or parochial school, courtesy funding provided by the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency, the Pennsylvania Department of Drug and Alcohol Programs, and the Pennsylvania Department of Education. Surveys are given to students in grades 6, 8, and 10, and 12, conducted in collaboration with PDE and the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency. PAYS is a primary tool in Pennsylvania's prevention approach for using data to drive decision-making by looking not just at rates of problems, behaviors, but also at the root causes of those behaviors. PAYS allows schools and communities, not just schools, to address reasons rather than only looking at the symptoms after the fact. This approach has been repeatedly shown in national research studies to be the most effective in helping youth develop into healthy, productive members of their society. Oh. It's not working. Denise?
And my apologies that I introduced you as Ms. Dr. Walker.
Oh, there we go. I don't know why it's not working. Do you want me to stand there next to you?
I got it.
Go back one. All right, so just to sort of give you a background on the areas of the question. So as Rich said, so it's to identify, the purpose of the questions is to identify problems that exist outside school that may impact student learning when they come into our schools. So the first area of questioning, so there's 4 domains that really go across the areas of community, school, family, and then questions that focus on individuals and their peers. So the first, and then those are divided further into like subsections. So the first area of questions is demographic information. Now this is not personally identifying questions, it's just gathering information about age, grade, race, gender, and who students are living with, as well as languages they speak. The next section digs into substance use. So we're looking at alcohol, tobacco, and other drug use and access to those drugs. The questions are sort of separated into use within the last 30 days as well as lifetime use. So it gives a sort of scope on what students have tried during their lifespan, but also that 30-day marker is a good measure for, you know, students who are actively or currently using any sort of substances. The next section is antisocial behavior. So this is actually, in this version of the PAYS, digging more into gambling behavior actually. So like you look at online gaming betting, possibly sports betting, as well as we see students who do personal skills games. So like pool, darts, you know, what are they maybe betting some money on? The next area is community and school climate and safety. So we all know that creating a safe and supportive school leads to academic and social success. So these questions focus on belonging, which obviously is a drive of our district, looking at feelings of safety, connectedness, value, and responsibility. And that's done looking at, you know, student commitment to and engagement with school activities. Are they involved in clubs and other activities within the school setting, as well as like what are they involved with, you know, outside of school. Also digs into some questions about violence and bullying. Next area is social and emotional health. So that's looking at students' coping skills, their resilience, ability to execute good judgment. It also digs into mental health difficulties. So we know we have students who are identified with mental health disorders. Questions about anxiety, depression, and those types of, you know, experiences for our students as well. Next section, systemic factors. That's looking sort of at student perception. So what is a student's perception of the risk associated with certain, you know, behaviors they might be exhibiting or substances they may be experimenting with? Do they perceive that as dangerous or not, or do they think it's sort of a normal behavior? What's their perception of the level of disapproval of teachers, parents, or peers? And how much do they disapprove or approve of peers exhibiting those behaviors as well? There's also questions that sort of dig into, you know, what are the risk factors and protective factors that our students have? So obviously, we want to find those risk factors and decrease those, and we want to boost up our protective factors. So we have set risk factors that we can look for, and these questions are able to probe for those, so we know where those risk factors might lie, so we can really boost our protective factors to provide that buffer for our students. And the social development strategy area is just really giving us an opportunity to get information on, you know, going into those protective factors and risk factors, what opportunities do our students have to build those skills that would be more protective factors? Do they have opportunities to seek recognition for, you know, skills that they've built? How are we facilitating their bonds with their family, school, the community, and their peers? We know stronger bonds with all of those individuals within your life create more healthy behaviors and more healthy patterns of behavior. And so we know they have stronger outcomes when we can maximize those strategies. All right, so just some more notes about the survey. Participation is voluntary, so students can skip any questions they do not want to answer, and they can opt out entirely. One just sort of interesting development over recent administrations of this here in Lower Merion is, so in 2017 and 19, we only were having one grade level within one building completing the survey, whereas now we have students from all middle and high schools completing the survey, and that's for the last 2 administrations.
So let's look at some of the data. The first area we're going to look at and highlight is prescription and over-the-counter medications, lifetime use. On one side, you obviously have what the state average is and what the district average is. So we see we are slightly in the district, a little bit lower than the state in prescription and pain relievers. Stimulants, we are very slightly lower than the state. And the over-the-counter to get high, and over-the-counter drugs to get high, we are a little bit more lower than the state average.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. What's the unit? Is this percent, number of students that have said yes? Like, how do we quantify this?
Of the students who participated, this is the percentage of all 6th, 8th, 10th, and 12th graders, the average of their responses. And this is for lifetime use. So you will see, as we go through the slides, occasionally an asterisk as you see under or next to used over the counter to get high. These are just ones that we as a team have selected to kind of look at because we either find them interesting or, as you can see, it's most accessible to most students, and we just want to focus on what's going on here. Okay?
Can I ask a data? So, and I'm assuming yes, but I just wanted to make sure. The grade bands that you showed earlier for this data, it's the same exact data, grade bands for the state as well, correct?
Correct.
Got it. Just wanted to make sure it's
Absolutely.
apples to apples because
Absolutely.
in the years in the past it wasn't. Okay, thanks.
No, in the past, we did not participate like the others.
So, but you couldn't compare, right? Or can you compare it by grade?
By 12th grade, because
Okay.
in the past 4 administrations, all 12th graders still get, but only in the last 2 administrations, we had mandated from the district level that all 6th, 8th, 10th, and 12th graders participate.
But, and you have all the data on the state and the district level by grade, so if we wanted to break it down by grade, we could.
Correct.
Great, thank you for collecting data
It's
well.
actually in the report by that way. We don't have to break it down, that's the way they report it out. So early initiation and high prevalence of drug use over a lifetime. You'll see again the asterisk of alcohol. We are in the district are a little bit higher. Marijuana use, we are almost exactly the same, and inhalants, we are lower. For risky substance use related behaviors, as in binge drinking specifically, in the past 2 weeks when the students were asked, the state was 4.0, we were 4.1. Driving after alcohol use in the past year, the state average is 0.8, we are 0.5, and that's very happy to hear that about our students knowing not to get behind the wheel. Between that, driving with the use of alcohol and with the next one, the use of marijuana, the state average is 1.1, where we are 0.8. Students who reported alcohol use in general gave someone money to buy it for them in the past, we are slightly higher. We have an asterisk again next to the middle one where it says parents provided it to me. We are slightly higher on that compared to the state. And the third one, we also have an asterisk for friends, parents provided it to me. We are considerably lower than the state. So it's interesting. Access and willingness to use, willingness to try alcohol before age 21. As a district, we are a little higher. Willing to try marijuana before the age 21, we are again a little higher. And the third situation is ordered prescription drugs over the internet. We are a little bit lower than the state average, and we're interested in following this and looking at this in the future. Social-emotional safety, frequency of bullying by students indicating some bullying in the past year. None or no, we are higher than the state average. No, in the past 12 months, we are slightly higher. Yes, now and then, we are slightly lower than the state average. And in yes, mostly daily, we are lower, but that's still, we want to follow something like that. Mental health concerns, felt depressed or sad in the most days in the past 12 months. We are considerably lower, I would say. It's almost a full 10 points. The third category, sometimes they think that life is not worth it. We are lower, and that always makes me feel a little bit better, but our students have a more resilient outlook. And then the third category is seriously considered suicide. We are lower in the state. And we asterisk that because we always want to follow something like that about our students. Access and willingness to use, willingness to try alcohol before age 20. Oh, nope, I'm sorry. Sorry, I'm not there. Positive school environment. This one definitely uplifts us a lot. Lots of chances for students to talk one-on-one with the teacher. Again, we are considerably higher than the state. Our students, obviously our students like to engage with their teachers. They see their teachers are trusted adults. Lots of chances to be part of a class discussion. Again, we're much higher. It makes us proud to know that our students like to be involved and are recognized in the classroom. And again, I feel safe at school, a high 90%, while the state is at 78.4. Again, it shows a testament to our teachers, our building administrators who try to create a good learning environment and coming to school culture. My teachers praise me when I work hard at school. Again, we are considerably higher than the state average on that. Involvement in pro-social activities. Again, I think we do very, very well as a district. Family-supported activities or hobbies, we are considerably higher than the state. School-sponsored activities, again, considerably higher. Other activities, meaning maybe not sponsored by the school, we are still considerably very high. And students who do not participate, we are considerably lower than the state average, which is a very good symbol of what we do here in the district to keep our students involved and active throughout their school day. So where does this all going and where is this all leading? So what we do as counselors, social workers, nurses, school psychologists, we try to work individually with students and then students in small group through counseling. Students can be identified through the START process. For those of you who are not familiar with the acronym START, that is the Lower Merion term. The equivalent to that would be SAP for the State Student Assistance Program. We just changed it to START. All students do the achievement team at the elementary level, and then we actually have SAP teams at our middle schools and high schools where we have a series of dedicated individuals who meet on a regular basis who either take on referrals, either a student can refer themselves, another student, parent can refer their student, teacher can refer a student, where it is given confidentially to someone on the START team or on a drop-off box. The team then begins to work through the referral, collect a little bit of data on the student, possibly interview the student, let the parent know that somebody was concerned with them at school, bring the parent into the process. All of these individuals that are on the SAP team are trained. You have to be a trained member of the team in order to participate. It is highly confidential. Sometimes it works out to be simply just a small stage a student's going through. Sometimes it is the start or in the middle of a student with a use problem that we try to support the family and the student while they're at school. We offer them referrals for outside practices. We refer them to anything that the state or the county government can offer us. As just one quick example. We work collaboratively with the Montgomery County Office of Drug and Alcohol and the Office of Mental Health. We also, I see a colleague here from Montgomery County IU. We also work, I sit on the Student Assistance Program Committee through the Montgomery County IU, where we have regular meetings where resources come together to discuss what they have and what they can offer our students and our parents. So it's an ongoing learning process for myself and anybody on my team that I invite to come along, or that we do turnaround information sessions in our counseling meetings. Presentations are done regularly through the annually, almost every year since I've been here, through the ISC and HSA. As a matter of fact, the ISC did a presentation, I believe in the month of December. They coupled with the Sharon Foundation and presented some of this data also, and talked about why and how this may happen in a developing adolescent. And we're always working and looking for professional development for our counselors, psychologists, social workers, nurses, staff, our SAP members. We get that through the IU. We get that through our own professional learning. We get that through going to SAP learning sessions and then using those resources that the state or the county can give us. It's always ongoing. And then anything that we believe that it might be worth for professional development to spend during our time that we were given certain times a year, we would indeed bring somebody in to do a portion of all those people that are listed up there, or all of them together. And it's ongoing. We're always looking, we're always working, we're always learning. The state and the county government has done a lot in the last couple years. When this survey started, it was just drug and alcohol. It has now moved to drug, alcohol, mental health, as well as some risk behaviors. So they are indeed developing what they're looking for and how they can support us. But please know, again, as I started in the beginning of this presentation, this isn't just a school. It's not just the school's work. It's the school, family, and community joining together to do everything we can to support our students and get them on, as active as possible and getting them on the most positive track of their life. So, Dr. Walker, do you have anything to add?
I don't think so. I think you covered all of it.
Okay. So that is our presentation. I just wanted to share with you that these are some of the acronyms that might have been used in the report that you saw or that you can get to see, and they're here. And then if we can address any of your questions this evening.
Thank you for the presentation, and I will say personal shout out to thank you for the glossary of terms. I know education loves us an acronym, and having the glossary right there is super helpful. So we'll start on this side of the table now. Do you have any questions? It's okay if the answer's no.
I did have we can later list it. I'm just more curious about the connection between habits of mind and then how this plays out in the later years. Just for the later list, curiosity.
Yeah, so that will be interesting because it's up and coming. It's been about 5 to 6 years that we started Habits of Mind, so it's definitely coming into the middle school and high schools now. I would like to think our adolescents and young adults remember the habits of mind. I'm not sure that that's possible or that's happening, but I would like them to think it is. But we have even grown in the habits of mind from just having them. We actually incorporate them into classroom vocabulary, classroom learning, and reporting out to parents using those terminologies so that it's get reinforced not only with the student at school, but also with the student at home.
Great, Dr. Sonner.
And I feel like mine are need to come later, but I really would want to understand what you said earlier, that last year you talked to ISC and other parent groups about the why and the how, how is this happening and why and what can we do with it? Because I think it's interesting to see the data, but it instantly goes into what's going on, how can we fix it? It's great that the data shows like the one-on-one relationship with the teachers, like that is a significant positive thing. And I agree with you, it's full community based. But I'd really like to kind of unpack that and see what's next. And then the other piece of that is, from everything I've heard around mental health and education, that we're in the beginning of a larger crisis around this. So how's the data look over the last 3 years? I know it's not comparable data. And I was told that the data, when it was pulled in years past, was also on senior skip day for 12th graders.
Say that last part again?
It was senior skip day for 12th graders. Did it impact the data?
In one case, in one school,
One case,
that
okay.
was true.
Okay, so we'll just have to be careful, but because we can't compare it directly, but are we seeing what we're seeing in the nation, where there is a mental health kind of peak with our students too, this data over 3 years, 5 years?
So this report doesn't have any national
Oh, no,
data.
I just meant for our kids. Are
Yeah.
we seeing it, is it going up, down?
In general, actually, there's the county did a infogram and put it out to everybody. In a lot of the areas, actually, things went down and things are looking better. That's not to say that's in one administration to another administration. It doesn't mean that it won't change or can't change for the next one. So in one period, from one administration to the next, a lot of areas got a lot better.
Great.
And I'll piggyback on that.
Worse, so that'd be great.
To point out that this is, for everyone, this is 2023 data.
Correct.
So it's, if we were even seeing that, we may see more of that impact in this next round.
Yeah, or we're doing something right and should see what it is, figure out what's the connection and double down on it.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. I have a couple of questions. So one, in the risky behavior gambling component, I'm just curious, are questions broken down, or also, I guess it's kind of combining with the bullying questions or the harassment questions. Is social media or online bullying asked about? Is that something that's being kind of parsed out? I don't know if you know, if you're...
I don't know off the top of my head, but it's not sounding familiar from the several times that I've definitely gone through the report. They talk about in school.
Mm-hmm. But they could still be online in
and
school.
how they felt about it.
Yeah.
That's something we could.
There are some identifications of, I mean, the report which we talked about. Sorry, hi. I'm Kimberly Frazier, Director of Student Services. Yes, they do identify within some of the questions, they parse out like location of bullying, where is that happening, classroom versus social media. So there is some distinction. I will say like this particular survey from 2021 to 2023, they made some pretty significant changes to the survey itself and the questions that they were asking, I think reflective of where we are as a society.
Is that the kind of thing where if you say, yes, I'm being bullied, it would then give you questions about where you're being bullied? Is that how the...
No, it's a static, like you give one response for every question, or you can choose to not answer.
Okay.
So I interpret your question, is there a question about being bullied online? And the question is more like, if you're bullied, where are you bullied? So so where it does capture it, I wasn't understanding,
Yeah.
you know, the question in the survey to the one you were asking.
Right. I was just curious because there's also quite a correlation there. Another question I have is if you can speak a little bit more, you know, kind of break down a little bit more. The suicidal ideation stat was like 12%, which I recognize is lower than the state, but that's high. So I'm curious what your, if you can break down how you address that, how do you follow that kind of
Sure.
concern?
So in so much of our, particularly in the counseling curriculum, and so much of all of our, that we do, things like Second Step, things like responsive classroom, things like restorative practices. It's everything that we do. We try to help the students understand that if they do have feelings or they do have thoughts about it, it's not that they're horrible, but they need to address them or go to a trusted adult to speak with them. We can't account for people's thoughts, but we can tell them or coach them and kind of guide them what they should do when they do have them.
I'm assuming all of these survey responses are anonymous? Yeah.
Oh,
So
yes.
how do you target, if you see a stat like 12%, how do you target your, for lack of a better term, your interventions or your lessons?
So, well, we'll team on this. Ms. Fraser will join in. I don't think that we target, it's everything that we do. We have student assistant teams at the middle school and the high school, and it's achievement teams at the elementary school. So ears and eyes are on kids all the time. If a bus driver reports something, we follow up on it. If a cafeteria aide reports something, we follow up on it. We work with our students. We have eyes and ears everywhere. Is it an infallible system? Surely not. But we do address anything that comes forward, and we bring the parents in as quickly as we can to let them know what the student said and how we can support them in school and any resources on the outside that we can provide for them.
And I would just add to that, the other component of it that comes in, we have the Safe to Say program as well. And I think students have really bought into that. We get a lot of reports that come, as someone who gets every notification, we get a lot of them, which is a great thing because it means students are saying things, people are reporting, hey, I heard so-and-so say this, hey, so-and-so posted this on social media. So we really do get a lot of that information, and I'm thinking, and this is me I haven't read direct research on this, but I think there's more of a willingness to talk about it, so I think some of that high number might be like, hey, my friends are saying this, and it's opening up a conversation, which we know talking about it is better. So I think there's a component of it, and again, I could be happy to bring back some research, but I think kids are more comfortable talking about it and reporting those things, which allows us to have those conversations, if that makes any sense.
It does, and I appreciate that. Part of, I guess, what I'm asking about is really how are we proactive in, it's wonderful that we have Safe to Say, for example. I think it's very, very important. And how are we more proactive about this? How do we emphasize resilience over anything else? How do we make sure that we're kind of promoting what while it's totally, it's true and it's important to talk about these things, it's also really important to talk about resilience and talk about that as opposed to kind of continually, I don't know. Yeah.
Yes, and so, as Rich and Lauren shared, this is anonymous, it's grouped, so you can't really get down to the student level. That's why when we talk about our ongoing work, the importance of our team members who are with students every day, right? The training we've provided them to allow team members to identify warning signs. What do you do when you see those warning signs? Who do you go to? How do you help intervene with that student? That critical importance of every staff member having that training, being aware of trauma-informed practices and how we engage with students when they're experiencing difficult times. And then, as they highlighted, the START team referrals and those achievement teams in each of the schools that get information from staff to say we're concerned about this student so that people can intervene. The other part that this does for us is that because we participate in this, then the county uses this to say, okay, Laura Marion, you've participated, and they've identified that they want to be able to provide to districts who choose to participate evidence-based practices to support students with social emotional learning. What they've done that through is Second Step. We already had Second Step. We've had it for
25 years.
25 years. But what the county does, though, is we have Second Step in place for students K to 4. They do provide additional support where a certified counselor will come in and support with delivering those lessons. And those lessons are aligned to the CASTLE framework that we've talked about here. Self-management, self-awareness, emotional control, those kind of things are incorporated within those lessons, which happen for students on a regular basis. So it's kind of tied into a curriculum too.
Thank you.
I said one briefing, so, which could be informative, perhaps. Are there any significant differences in the non-response rate to any of those tougher questions comparing our kids to the state average?
Go for it.
No, I don't think that we looked that closely to say, looking at like non-response rate versus response rate. I mean, I did look at by our grade levels, what was our percent
No,
of
but I'm like
participation.
at the question level. Is there a particular question or two where our kids were more or less likely to provide a response at all? Because if they are, that could be informative in either direction on
Yeah.
actionable things.
I understand now. So it does give us the response, with each question, it gives us the response by grade, and they're consistent throughout. Students do have an option to opt out of any question. It often comes from what I understand, with the teachers administering it, students might not understand a word like hallucinogenic. They might not understand the concept of really what gambling is, the younger students.
Yeah,
So they would opt out of that question, and it would only be a few kids not doing it. That's not what you're asking?
Well, I was going I was going to ask something else. I was going after more of what Lauren was talking about earlier, is like a willingness and an openness, a recognition that these are things that it's safe to talk about some of these issues. And so maybe maybe our numbers are higher on some of these things, perhaps because of good work that we're doing and making kids feel safer and more, empowered to bring these things forward without this negative stigma. I don't know, but if there's any difference either way where we are high or low on a specific question at whatever grade, anyway, it just could be informative and helpful to look at that. That's all.
No, I think that's a really interesting question. As soon as you asked it, you got my wheels turning too, because I think both pieces, like you're saying, is there questions that are really hard for our students to answer still, despite what we're doing? Yeah, either way. Or are our students freely, it's anonymous, but are they more willing to talk about it? It's a really interesting question.
Yeah, you definitely had data face.
So just on that same note, I wanted to ask this earlier, is how many kids responded? What's our percentage of kids that responded? Because that was the only baseline question, and have we seen a difference in that? Because you don't have to look at the individual question, you can just look at how many kids did it.
So in sixth grade, 641 total, so that's almost all of sixth grade.
94.5%.
Yeah, overall.
That's awesome.
Don't bury the lead, man, that's some great
We're going to tag team this one, go ahead.
Eighth grade, 589 students.
86.3%.
Yeah, 10th grade, 571,
81.3%.
and 12th grade, 506.
63.6%. Now, that might be a little, that's using 10th day enrollment numbers compared to number of participants, but given where we were in the year when it was administered.
That wasn't the senior bag day, was it?
Yeah.
It was not. And, I want to go back to that. I think I was here for that, obviously. I think it was insinuated that we purposely did the survey on that, and that is not the case. We don't always know when senior cut day is. It's not on the calendar.
Last year they found, they had 80 of them last year.
And as Mr. Weinstein,
They call them on different days.
yeah, as Mr. Weinstein tell you, they're often planned more than once. That's the other thing. So.
Sarah, thank you.
To go along with the percentages of students, how and when are we administering? At the high schools, is it done during advisory? What does it look like at the middle schools?
Great question. It's done both in advisory and then sometimes in high school, I believe we take either social studies classes or English classes because all students must participate in those classes, the required classes. The window of administration is from the mid-end September to the mid-end of November of the year that it's administered.
Man, seniors are cutting that early in the year?
I don't know, my senior last year cut a lot.
And how long approximately does it take a student to complete the survey?
Supposedly 45 to 60 minutes.
Okay. I'm just thinking of, especially our sixth graders, maybe some fatigue setting in as they get towards the second half of that survey and how that plays into the data response rates.
All that. The seniors get wise sometimes and know what to answer, know what not to answer. Statistically, they're supposed to have questions that reinforce someone's first answer or last answer. I'm not sure how the psychometrics are set up for this, but they do spend a lot of money and an awful lot of time putting it together to get it out for the schools and the communities.
And are there options for students to take it split up over multiple days, or they have to do it in one sitting?
If we felt a student needed to and was going to do it seriously, we would put that in place. So it starts, and maybe a student needs more time. They would let the student sit there and take more time, just like a regular test.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
We're still going, don't worry. That was my
Question is like, could we break it up? Because there is, after a certain period of time, you will not answer, no matter if you're sixth grade or adult. So you'll get more accurate data if you break it up.
It is done online, and that can
The
often
system
move
lets you
people
do that.
along.
See, now it sounds like PDE should ask us how to do it, because I'm sitting here thinking about all the questions, and I'm like, we should make it like the NCLEX, where if you answer this, then it would cut out certain things or make it longer or shorter as needed. So I have a couple questions. I think they're pretty quick. In the demographic questions, do they allow for, I would say, gender nonconforming identities, like non-binary students, trans students?
From what I'm reading on the report, it only gives the option of male and female.
Okay, cool, that's something
I'm
we
sorry,
should.
male, female, and other.
Okay, that's something we should definitely, if we have any way to reach out to PDE and influence this in any way, that's not super helpful, since my next question was, can we disaggregate the data to sort of look at what our most at-risk groups are for any of these certain things, because a lot of things, especially social ostracization, being ostracized, and self-harm, suicidal ideation, you are much higher rate of risk for LGBTQ plus, especially trans kids, in that, and that is a real concern. In our area, even with the political leanings of an area or not, that is definitely something that our students are really at risk for, and that's something that the state really needs to hear from us, that needs to be included in this data. Is there any resources available at the end of completing this that we give our students to say, like, this is what you do if, like, here's who you talk to if you're drinking a lot, here's who you talk to if are having suicidal ideation, here's who you talk to if you're being bullied, like this seems like a good opportunity to push in resources. Even
identify where you're going to push the resources?
Pops up on the screen.
And no, you can either have it as a pop-up on the screen, or you can have it as like a follow-up ticket if there's in any way that you, like, there has to be some kind of identification that this student took it, so that Abby couldn't take it in INE and then take it in social studies class, like for me, because I didn't feel like sitting through an hour-long survey. So there has to be something, and we could even kick out an email with a list of resources to every student who was in the grade band that took it out. We have lists, and so sure, it's not going to be this, it's not going to be targeted, and it's not going to be the same as sitting down and having a one-to-one conversation with a student in a way of real connection, but bringing the ability for students to have the resources, sometimes if you make it easier for people, that's what it takes. Like, sometimes an extra click, an extra search is the hurdle it takes to do that. And so it seems to me like we send enough emails. Sending a resource email at the end of the collection of the survey, even for the whole student body, could be a really good share of resources. Personally, the one that really bumped for me was the number of students that were ordering prescription drugs online. That sort of smacked me across the face. I know that there is not a way that we can find this, but I am very curious what people are ordering online. Like, what? I mean, I know that's probably a whole can of worms that we don't want to talk about at 9:30 on a Monday, but that was something that really stood out for me. And the other thing I just want to give you a second to do is to just share any info on how a student or a parent can refer their child or a friend for a referral to a START team in their building.
It could be multiple ways. Anybody can call their school counselor, school nurse, a teacher. A student can refer a student. There are boxes in several, there are forms that are around the school, but definitely in the counseling office. And there are confidential boxes when it just fills out the form and slips it in.
The boxes are in the counseling office?
They're throughout the school.
Okay, great. Great. I just, again, making it easy, letting people know the information where they're at. I think that's everybody. Do we have any in-person comment from the community? Anybody want to shout it out? Ms. Buckman, do we have anybody from the community online? Let's hear it.
We have two comments online. Lisa Prosnitz of Penn Valley. Where will LMSD share the full data? The presentation is on board docs, but not the full report. Where will that be shared? And Michelle McGill of Ballackinwood, excellent presentation on this survey. You have been able to answer every question from the board with a data-driven response. Very impressive.
Yeah. Thank you for both of those comments. Where can folks find the full survey?
Now that we present it to you,
Wonderful.
we will post it on the website.
On the LMSD
On the
website?
LMSD website, right?
Fantastic. That is everything. I want to thank everybody who's been here all night for your thoughtful answers, your listening ears, and your patience as we get through this really long and informative but incredibly worthy discussions of these two big topics. And our next meeting of the Curriculum Committee will be February 10th, Monday evening, 7 p.m. in this room, and I will see each and every one of you there. Good night.